Chapter 1375. Moreover, Shin was behind Shin Mo. He had used up all his skills. He probably wouldn't be able to escape. But right at this moment, a ray of silver light flashed. It was the rifle in Spade Z's hand. The weapons clashed and sparks fell. Since she didn't have time to attack, she used her back to block the knife for Shin Mo since she still had a lot of HP. At this moment, Lin Feng and Yunhu rushed over after reviving. Hoshino's finger paused. He knew it wasn't a good time to attack. He glanced up at the opposite side. Then he and Shin retreated back to the tower. They were so fast that Supreme Alliance couldn't encircle them. But if Supreme Alliance retreated just like that, they wouldn't be called Supreme Alliance. They took advantage of the fact that the Japanese's tank and archer hadn't revived yet. Shin Mo and Bojio were like two streams of air, skimming towards the opponent's jungle. Especially Bojio, she leaped over in just 2 steps. She first picked up the red buff and then skimmed towards the troops on the top lane. What was strange was that she didn't kill the small beasts at the side of the bushes. This doesn't seem like Spade Z's vision. What's going on? Some people couldn't understand. The shoutcaster guessed, Spade Z must have left the small beasts for Shin Mo. Firstly, it would allow Almighty Shin to recover quickly. Secondly, it would make it easier for Shin Mo to use his big move. Have they never thought of returning to the city to recover? Once he said that, Melinda realized something. Spade Z and Shin Mo from Supreme Alliance had never returned to the city. At this moment, she didn't dare to make any further analysis. The foreigners were adorable. They had come with hope at the start, but now, they wanted to see Supreme Alliance's screen even more. At this moment, the audience realized something. Spade Z didn't kill the small beasts for more than one reason. She wanted to take down the entire troop on the top lane. Shin and Hoshino had realized this a long time ago. They had rushed to the top lane as fast as they could. But with the Beast Lord's buff and the help of the Flying Dragon, Supreme Alliance's tower attack speed was really fast. Even with Shin and Hoshino, the defense tower on the top lane of the Japanese was left with less than a third of its HP. At the same time, the middle, the bottom, and the other 2 paths were all taken down. Especially the middle lane, it was like a map. First, it was Yunhu and Lin Feng. Then, the 2 of them gathered together from the 2 jungles. They led the Flying Dragon to the last defense tower outside the city gates. However, there was one thing worth noting. The Japanese archers and tanks had been revived. Shin and Hoshino were there too. The Flying Dragons that Supreme Alliance brought along were all gone. Their speed was so fast that people could not help but admire the Japanese. Even at this stage, they could still pull the match back to a draw. No, that's not right. It wasn't just a draw. It was because they had an absolute advantage. Supreme Alliance had been focusing on the top lane and had forgotten what the bottom lane was like. It was only then that people realized that 2 batches of super soldiers had already arrived at the bottom lane. The red lines were hard to miss. When did this happen? The playback was played back. Only then did he get a clearer look. It was the cooperation of Hoshino and Shin. Very quickly, the news of Supreme Alliance's defense tower being destroyed appeared on the screen. A large number of super soldiers started to head towards the center of Supreme Alliance. F***CK, oh no. Zhao Sanpang was shocked, he even forgot that they were wearing earphones. He shouted, "Little Spade, what are you doing? Hurry up and return to the city, our home is going to be destroyed." Everyone who played this game knew that. In terms of the rules, it didn't matter how many died. The final outcome would be determined by the destruction of the city. Hence, this game tested the teamwork and battle strategy between teammates. Any carelessness and the tables would be turned. Mei Lin found another excuse. Supreme Alliance is too careless. Sometimes, Hoshino and Shin would purposely create an illusion to make the other teams lower their guard. It seems like the outcome of this match is set. Lin Feng is returning to the city. A voice came from the audience. But in the next second, his return to the city was interrupted because Hoshino had rushed over and his scimitar was right next to him. Lin Feng moved nimbly, avoiding his attack. At the same time, Yunhu darted over, using the stun skill to trap Hoshino on the spot. This is probably Supreme Alliance's first chance to kill Hoshino, the shoutcaster said. The shoutcaster added, but they can't make a move because once they do, there won't be enough time. Hoshino predicted this, which is why he rushed in. There are only two outcomes: either he dies in the team battle, delaying Supreme Alliance's time and Supreme Alliance's city will be destroyed, or he doesn't fight and his harassment will be effective. Supreme Alliance will have to send Shin Mo or Spade Z back. That will be their advantage because Supreme Alliance's city can't wait any longer. After he finished his sentence, there was indeed one less figure on the screen. It was Spade Z. She seemed to have pressed the button to return to the city the moment Hoshino rushed in. At this moment, she appeared in the middle of Supreme Alliance's city. The audience heaved a sigh of relief. That scared me to death. Any later and the crystal would have been destroyed. Thank goodness. Some patted themselves with lingering fear. But even so, Supreme Alliance was in a disadvantageous position. Because once Bojio left, the situation became 3 against 4. It was at this moment the Japanese's tank turned and started a team battle. Hoshino, who was about to retreat, suddenly changed his route and once again headed towards Lin Feng's position. As a member of the audience, Zhao Sanpang's expression changed. It wasn't just Zhao Sanpang, even the usually expressionless Xiao Jing frowned at this moment. The shoutcaster pointed out the pros and cons. This is bad, Supreme Alliance might be wiped out this time. Before he could finish his sentence, Yu Cixin's figure was like an enlightened sword, marking the damage. No matter how accurate Lin Feng's positioning was, he wouldn't be able to escape. But just like what Coco had said, they had underestimated Supreme Alliance. Just before Lin Feng died, he released the last attack, reducing the archer who was walking over to a sliver of HP. This allowed Shin Mo to set up an electric formation when he neared. It didn't just slow down everyone's movements, it also took a person's head. 1 for 1. It had to be said that Lin Feng's positioning was beautiful. He circled the Japanese's archer. That person only realized that he had underestimated his enemy after he died. But this didn't stop the Japanese's attack. And there was one thing. The Japanese's archer had a chance to revive after he died. But Lin Feng was gone. Everyone was well aware of this. But compared to this, what they were more afraid of was the possibility of their team being wiped out. Because everyone knew that compared to the Japanese's archer, Yu Cixin and Hoshino were more difficult to deal with. Shin Mo wasn't easy to catch. They landed all the damage on Yunhu. Yunhu didn't escape because he knew that the more he tried to escape, the more likely it was that he wouldn't be able to get anything. Since he couldn't escape, he would drag someone along. With that thought, he jumped with a big move. Out of everyone's expectations, he landed a wave of damage on the opponent's tank. Then he leaned forward and hooked Yu Cixin and Hoshino to his side. He had a stun effect around him. That was also in that instant. Shin Mo used a skill to teleport back to the center of the battlefield, his long sword aimed at the tank who had less than a third of HP, KO. 2 Ks and Os sounded at the same time. Both Yunhu and the opponent's tank wouldn't be able to continue the competition. Which meant that in the entire arena, there were only 5 people left. The Japanese had Yu Cixin, Hoshino, and the archer who was about to revive. Supreme Alliance only had Bojio and Shin Mo. Most importantly, after Shin Mo killed the Japanese's tank, Hoshino's machete had shaved off half of his HP. Moreover, Yu Cixin's skill had a marking effect. He couldn't avoid the opponent's big move even when he went into the bushes. This time, Shin Mo won't be able to make it. Spade Z was still too far away. The minions had just been cleared. At this time, even if he jumped over the wall, he wouldn't be able to rush back. And Qin Mo, who had less than a third of his HP, had to face Yusishin and Hoshino. Shui Yaoyao didn't dare to watch for a moment. Her fingers trembled as she closed her eyes. Just as everyone thought that the competition was about to end, Qin Mo's figure suddenly disappeared in front of their eyes. That was a skill teleportation. It was as though ashes were suddenly ignited. Everyone sat up straight, watching the scene in excitement. Even the shoutcaster couldn't help but exclaim, "Beautiful." But Yusishin couldn't let Qin Mo escape just like that. He changed his direction and flew towards him. But Qin Mo wasn't prepared to fight with him. His slender figure skimmed towards the bottom lane. Hoshino seemed to have predicted this. He was one step ahead of Qin Mo and waited there. He was about to strike with his machete. Suddenly, another figure appeared in front of him. The long spear rose up and he was lifted into the air. It was Spade Z. No one had ever heard such intense tapping sounds from the keyboard. The two of them had the same hand speed and seemed to be on par. The machete met the long spear. Countless silver sparks were ignited. At this moment, the archer on the Japanese's side revived and fired a long-range cannon towards them. This cannon had a stun effect. Not only could it cause the enemy's HP to drop, it could also make them dizzy for a few seconds. Even Bojio couldn't avoid this move. Yusishin took the opportunity to use his big move to mark Spade Z's HP. 2 with low HP against 2 with half HP and the opponent's archer. Supreme Alliance was probably going to be wiped out. After all, Spade Z wasn't like Qin Mo, who still had the skill to teleport. At this stage, the ending seemed to have been predicted. But no one noticed. Chapter 1376. Her hand speed was so fast that it was dazzling. No one could see what she did. They thought she was escaping. But the screen didn't show it. It seemed like it was too late to escape. Even when Qin Mo turned sideways and used the sword formation to slow Hoshino down. But at this moment, Yusishin activated his big move. A mark damage and the long knife went straight for Bojio. The figure in front of him lay down. The fans suddenly fell into silence. Even Shui Yaoyao's expression was blank. The current situation was already very clear. It was originally 3 against 2. If Bojio died, Qin Mo wouldn't be able to hold on. If Bojio died, Qin Mo wouldn't be able to hold on. Supreme Alliance was really going to lose. Even the shoutcaster felt regretful. He was about to take the microphone and make the final conclusion. Mei Lin said bluntly, "There's no need to continue fighting, even Qin Mo can't escape." At this moment, everyone felt the same. But in the next second, the fans, who had their shoulders slumped, seemed to have been injected with adrenaline. They straightened their backs and stared at the screen. The figure that was lying down stood up again. Revival armor. Almighty Z used a revival armor just now. As expected of my big spade, you're so handsome. Melinda was even more stunned. After all, a resurrection armor would require a change of equipment. When did Spade Z show off her skills? Mei Lin didn't have a thorough understanding of Supreme Alliance. Did she really think that Spade Z had been playing at the side ever since the competition started? She wasn't called the FC King of Zone C for nothing. Qin Mo seemed to have expected her revival. He didn't escape. Instead, he used a teleportation skill and flashed behind Yusishin. Wait a minute, Qin Mo's HP is low. What else is he trying to do? What else was he trying to do? Of course, he was going to fight. No one had expected such a move. Even Yusishin paused for a moment before turning around. But the moment he turned, Qin Mo used another teleportation skill. Qin Mo teleported again. After he disappeared from Yusishin's sight, he stood tall and straight. He held his long sword and stood in the bushes. Even his sleeves were fluttering from the wind from the sword. When people saw this scene, he really couldn't stand any longer. Because this scene was too familiar. They were so familiar with each other that even now, when they saw that action, their eyes would turn red from excitement. Even Hoshino realized something and was about to hit the person in the bushes. He moved agilely and waved his long sword. As the sword formation fell, 3 silver blades fell, and even his whole body was covered in silver splendor. KO. Shin collapsed. Even Hoshino lost more than half of his HP. 3,000 knife cuts, blood reverse kill. This was Chin Mo. Hoshino didn't give him a chance to escape. The scimitar was about to cut off his last drop of blood. Right at this moment, Spade Z raised her spear. This time, it wasn't to help Chin Mo block the attack. Instead, it was a big move. Everyone could clearly see the youngster sitting in front of the computer, waving the mouse with her right hand, thrusting her spear horizontally. Just as the enemy's archer was about to stun her, she quickly retreated. Just when everyone thought it was over, the youngster jumped over the wall and closed in on Hoshino from another direction. The young man leaped over the wall and closed in on Hoshino from another direction. Before the screen of silver light could disperse, the spear in her hand had already struck Hoshino's body. Even the white dragon's roar was left on the ground. The scene was so cool that no one could look straight at it. Hoshino's finger paused and then he smiled lightly. He had already predicted the outcome. I underestimated you, Z. But, I can't leave by myself. With that, he turned around and used his scimitar to lock Chin Mo in place. If it was him, he might not be able to bring Chin Mo away. But the Japanese still had long-range attacks. The stun cannon shot over again. There was a loud bang. KO. 2 sound effects played at the same time. Chin Mo raised his eyebrows. The dead Hoshino took off his earphones with a smile. Chin Mo didn't take it off, his side profile was still handsome. His slender fingers tapped on his earphones, and he said faintly to the remaining figure of Supreme Alliance, "Take revenge for your boyfriend." Everyone, we really didn't expect Almighty Chin to have such a reaction after his death. Zhao Sanpeng's mouth twitched. F***CK, how can they be so lovey-dovey at such a time? I'm impressed by this shameless Chin Mo. This is an international broadcast, is he trying to let the whole world know that he and Little Spade are a couple? Hoshino paused, as though he hadn't expected Chin Mo to say that. The fans at the scene exploded, holding on to their faces with their hands. Big Spade. Quick. Take revenge for your boyfriend. The shoutcasters coughed lightly. They really didn't know what to say. But the competition wasn't over yet. Whether it was Shin or Hoshino, they could still be revived. It was just 20 seconds, there shouldn't be any more problems. But the excitement of this team battle had attracted attention from both domestic and international audiences. Because there had never been anyone like Supreme Alliance, who was able to turn the tables in such a critical situation. This was enough to prove the strength of Supreme Alliance. But how was this enough? Spade Z, who had always been known for her speed, would definitely take this chance to counterattack. The shoutcasters, who originally thought that the competition was over, watched as Spade Z used a blue buff to drain 1/3 of her HP. Then, she leaped over the wall and hid in the bushes. It was as if he was clearly telling everyone a truth. I'm going to take revenge for my boyfriend. Ambush and kill. The archer from the Japanese also realized that she was coming to kill him. Without any hesitation, he didn't even dare to stop, activating his sprinting skill to avoid the next attack. But the strange thing was, no one came close. Was Spade Z still waiting for an opportunity? Or was she waiting for a big move? There were all sorts of guesses, and they could almost imagine a big show. But what no one expected was that, once again, Spade Z didn't appear beside the Japanese's archer. She was on the top lane. There were 2 waves of troops on the top lane. With the shift of the camera, the audience realized that during the battle, the last defense tower of the Japanese's top lane was gone. Now, Spade Z was leading the 2 waves of troops directly towards the city center. The Japanese archer was confused, quickly pressing the button to return to the city. If there was a hidden message, it must be. Chapter 1377. If the previous competition had been a competition of skills and judgment, then now it was a competition of time. Now it was a competition of time. The usually calm Japanese club manager couldn't help but stand up at this moment. Needless to say, all the fans who were watching this competition. Hurry, hurry, hurry. That was the only thought in everyone's mind. The Japanese archer's return to the city sign was still turning. He couldn't wait to appear in front of the Crystal City. He's here. The shoutcaster got excited when he saw the archer arrive in time. Right at this moment, Spade Z brought the troops to the center of the city. But it was obvious that it would be difficult for her to push down the city. It was simple. It would be difficult for her to attack the city with less than half her HP. After all, she wasn't a tank or an archer. She wouldn't be able to withstand such heavy damage and she wouldn't be able to carry out long-range attacks. Moreover, Sheen would revive in 12 seconds. Hence, it was best for Spade Z to retreat and wait for Chin Mo to revive before fighting again. This was a thought that anyone would have. But that didn't include Bojo. Just as the Japanese were prepared for her to retreat, Bojo appeared. Everyone saw with their own eyes that she had taken advantage of the line of minions to sneak in, and with a flick of her spear, all the damage landed on the archer. Just for a moment. The archer was reduced to half his HP. How can she have such a strong destructive power? This was something that everyone was confused about. Logically speaking, Spade Z had already changed her equipment to a revival armor. The damage should have been reduced. Wait a minute. Her equipment seems different from before. Indeed, it was different. But the main point was that no one knew when she had changed her equipment. Everyone's gaze landed on the youngster. Her silver hair moved slightly as she moved the mouse. But that was why her nose bridge was high. Even her side profile had an indescribable sharpness and handsomeness. Inexplicably, it gave people a sense of confidence. If it was her, she might be able to do it. F***CK, look at her finances. From the start of the team battle, everyone had overlooked something. That was the comparison between their finances. Now, they realized. Spade Z's finances were 2,000 more than the Japanese archers. She changed her equipment at the last minute and suppressed her finances. No wonder she could reduce the archer's HP by half in one move. And it was not over yet. Everyone watched as she moved sideways. Perhaps it was because her speed was too fast, even her body seemed to be able to stir up the wind. However, the Japanese archers were not to be trifled with. His opponent's HP was already low after hitting him just now. As long as he used his ultimate move, Spade Z was going to die. However, at that moment, everyone saw the young man move his mouse and draw a Z shape. His spear went up and went straight for the shooter's back. The cannonball was fired. But the target had disappeared. Not only that. More importantly, Spade Z's goal had never been to kill him. Because the spear was raised, she took advantage of the fact that there were only 2 tank soldiers left and directly attacked the crystal. Gotcha. Crystal's HP, which had been low to begin with, was now only left with less than half of its HP. At this moment, the Japanese archer realized that he had been tricked again. Spade Z had intentionally diverted his attention so that he wouldn't be able to clear his troops. Chapter 1378. He wanted to clear the line of soldiers. However, to everyone's surprise, Spade Z didn't give him the chance. She lifted her spear again. The dragon roared and only 2 words rang through the screen. KO. It was a different weapon but she used the same tactic. Counterattack with low HP, 3,000 silver lights fell. Bojo didn't stop holding the mouse. 3 seconds. 2 seconds. 1 second. Just as everyone was wondering why she jumped in front of the Japanese spring. Yu Cixin was revived. He dashed out. However, at this moment, Bo Jiu used her spear to block. What is Spadesy doing? She will definitely die. Indeed. Yu Cixin only used a big move to mark her. He would be able to kill Spadesy instantly. However, the moment his blade landed, a loud collapsing sound could be heard on the screen. Following the shattering of the crystal, each piece was like a piece of glass with a silver brilliance. Faintly, the chanting of the white dragon could be heard. Everything was still, including the movements of the hero that Yu Cixin was controlling. In the game, Bo Jiu was still stepping on the silvery white dragon's shadow that fell from her spear. Just like a youngster, isolated. Swoosh. Countless 3D stereoscopic sound effects surrounded the surroundings. Two words appeared at the same time. Victory. In that second, the entire arena was silent. Their breaths seemed to be rushing through their chests. Their minds were still filled with the suppression of the line. They could even hear the sharpness that burst forth from the youngster's body, bringing with it a sharp light that swept through the army. Along the way, everyone's sadness and laughter stopped at this moment. Until Bo Jiu reached out to remove her earphones. Her lips were slightly curved. Deafening cheers rang through every corner of the bird's nest. WE1? Feng Shang was still in disbelief. Lin Feng was the first to stand up. He ran towards Bo Jiu, who was still sitting on the chair. This time, even though he knew that his captain was beside him, he couldn't control his hands. Even Coco and the others lifted Bo Jiu up into the air. Bright laughter came, accompanied by unforgettable emotions. Everyone's reactions were the most realistic. In addition to the applause, the fans covered their mouths and their eyes reddened from being moved. Only those who had traveled together with him would understand. It wasn't easy. It would be great if they could win. A fan whispered, "Sister Turtle, I want to cry." "Idiot, why are you crying? You should be smiling now." However, when she said this, the voice of the businesswoman was hoarse. "Can you understand? One day, we let the tears break the dam." It wasn't because she was sad. It was because he was touched. Because at this moment, everyone standing in front of the screen was witnessing their glory. Many people still remembered it. Chapter 1379. As the victorious team. The 3D screen would continuously replay the team's name, including every exciting scene during the competition. The first time they showed their brilliance in the city competition, the continuous counterattacks against the top 8 teams in the province, and the national qualifier where a slender figure stood in the arena in a daze after losing, his head lowered. The revival match that shocked the industry, the national qualifier where they didn't give up, the only place they could sleep was in the internet cafe when they were insulted so badly that they didn't feel safe. Or the way they stood in front of the camera, never shifting their gaze away. And now, the performance of the Asian Cup. The familiar IDs of Supreme Alliance flashed past their eyes again and again. Along the way, everyone's sadness and laughter were imprinted in everyone's hearts as they moved the mouse. At the end of the scene was a calm voice that made countless fans scream. "I am the captain of Supreme Alliance, Qin Mo Whoosh." Countless people stood up. The MVP of the match was still Qin Mo. When Bo Jiu saw the announcement, she felt that she had finally fulfilled her wish. That person wasn't pulled down. He was still standing in his position, and this time, she was beside him. Qin Mo noticed her gaze and tilted his head, chuckling lightly. "Do you like to watch that much? MMH?" MMH, Bo Jiu's mood was bubbling with happiness, but she wasn't sure what the Almighty was referring to. Qin Mo's voice was still calm. "Hurry over." Bo Jiu didn't intend to stay far away from him. It was better for her boyfriend to stand as close as possible. Qin Mo saw through her thoughts, the corners of his lips lifted, making her feel a hint of sweetness. His smile was successfully captured by the camera. Hence, the entire country. Oh no, the entire world was caught off guard and fed a mouthful of dog food. What else could Zhao Sanpang say? He was so handsome and considerate, but he didn't have a girlfriend. How could Chin Mo, a stinky man who didn't understand a girl's heart, smile like that? Humph, he would never admit that he was jealous. They followed the procedure. The two teams wanted to greet each other. Then, Supreme Alliance went up to receive the award. The two teams stood in the same position. The captain faced the captain, and the vice-captain faced the vice-captain. It had to be said that the Japanese were probably the team that lost the most gracefully, because there wasn't even a trace of embarrassment on their faces. On the other hand, the club's manager was on the verge of breaking down. He did not pay any attention to the interview. Until now, he still did not believe that their team would lose. Not to mention Mei Lin, who was already dumbfounded. She had come specifically for the Japanese and had previously stepped on Supreme Alliance. How was she going to salvage the situation now? Yu Cixin brought his team members over and stretched out his hand. His face was handsome and devilish. Even his voice didn't change. We'll fight again next year. Chin Mo replied faintly. The relationship between the two of them could not be considered friendly. Even though they were all very polite. Hoshino's side was different. He didn't shake hands. Instead, he leaned forward and did something that no one expected. Chapter 1380. Bojo lifted the corners of her lips. Hoshino, thank you. Such words could only be understood by companions who had the most tacit understanding with each other. Hoshino smiled, his words filled with a hint of blackness. I really want to know Chin Mo's expression now. Lin Feng wanted to shout at the side. You aren't the only one who wants to know, I want to know too. But I don't dare to look. What a hero. Since you dare to hug little Spade, Almighty Hoshino, I, Lin Feng, respect you for being a man. Thinking of this, Lin Feng stealthily shifted his gaze. As expected. The smile on the captain's face was cold. His face didn't turn black, but anyone who saw his devilish smile would feel a chill down their spine. Lin Feng was afraid that his captain wouldn't be able to control himself and would kick him. After all, regardless of whether it was in the game or in real life, their captain's fighting ability was something no one dared to challenge. The entire Supreme Alliance seemed to be able to imagine the scene of a huge vinegar jar falling to the ground. Surprisingly, Chin Mo didn't stop them. After the two of them hugged, he reached out to hold her wrist. When he brushed past her, he threw a sentence at Hoshino. You won't have another chance. Regardless of what it was. Hoshino thought about Chin Mo's reaction. The only sentence he didn't think about was this. It was a little heart-wrenching. But it was probably because he didn't want to be that person right from the start. That was why he felt that it was fine. Chin Mo didn't care about other people's opinions. But he respected her completely. That was Z, the young lord of the hacker world who had saved him from the whirlpool. How did she make it here? He knew it better than anyone else. This was probably the only thing he wanted. Hoshino turned, his gaze landing on Chin Mo's back view. The moment the thought came into his mind, he heard a voice. Are you still watching? Aren't you leaving? It was Yu Cixin. He was smiling, but there wasn't any warmth in his eyes. He wasn't in a good mood. Why was he hugging someone who had one? Yu Cixin pursed his lips, walking in the opposite direction. The audience couldn't see the invisible surge. The only thing that could be seen was the hug that he did not expect. The crowd exploded. He hugged. My almighty Hoshino is so strong. He is not afraid at all. I'll bet 100 yuan that almighty Chin will definitely get it back from Big Spade at this hour. I'll add 100. I've been a fan of almighty Chin for so long, I know him better than anyone else. Do you still remember the photo of Lin Feng trying to win Big Spade's heart? I used to be naive and didn't understand the subtleties, but now I'm completely jealous. Almighty Chin will definitely say, come, let's have a good talk. Just thinking about it makes me want to have a nosebleed. How cute. I didn't expect there to be so many hidden sweets to eat. Watching the interaction between the two, the CP fans' hearts were about to explode. The competition was good, and after the competition, it would be even better. The ticket was worth it. Coincidentally, Chin Mo turned to the left and said something to the youngster. Both of them were dressed in Supreme Alliance's uniform, their figures tall and handsome. This scene revealed a sweetness that she had never experienced before. Many fans couldn't help but take out their phones to take photos. They looked at it every day and felt sweet in their hearts. Chapter 1381. Chin Mo asked, "How do you intend to explain your cheating incident tonight?" Bo Jiu choked. "Brother Mo, isn't your definition of cheating a little too hasty? You're not allowed to have any opinions." Chin Mo tugged her, domineering and childish. As expected, he was jealous. Bo Jiu couldn't help but laugh. When Chin Mo saw this, he held her hand and squeezed it, signaling her to behave. The interaction was too subtle. But it didn't pass the fans' eyes. But before they could see enough. On the other side, the Asian organizing committee walked out. According to international practice, the winning team would stand on the highest podium. But in reality, it wasn't important. The most important thing was that at this moment, the flag of China was flying in the sky. It was the color of blazing flames. The 11 of them lined up in a row. At this moment, they looked more like youngsters who had grown up on this land, singing the same song. Every man had a long-cherished wish in his heart. They could either be a soldier and protect their country, or he could appear on the international stage and let everyone in the world see the national flag that was raised in their eyes. Because this was the only way to win more respect. This was their original intention. It hadn't changed over the years. Regardless of what they had encountered. The magical thing was, when you see the flag rising, your insides will become hot and soft. Regardless of what they had encountered, they would only feel glory at this moment. Even if this profession wasn't understood, it wasn't important anymore. It was just as the introduction said. They had once fallen into a bottomless abyss. Now, they were determined to make a comeback and establish themselves as kings. The 11 of them appeared on 32 mainstream media outlets, 64 live streaming platforms and even foreign magazines. Of course, Bo Jiu and Chin Mo took up the most space. But no one knew. At this moment, the bunch of people who had just received their awards didn't have time to browse through Weibo, magazines, or media outlets. They had wanted to celebrate. They reached Yin Weio's internet cafe. They didn't know when this group of people started to like to gather on the second floor. It was probably because the sound of the keyboard felt real. It's an occupational hazard that makes me speechless. Lin Feng's self-evaluation was accurate. But it didn't affect them at all. Feng Yi knew that they needed a breather. Other than the interview on the national channel, he avoided everything else. He ordered a lot of food and drinks and brought his assistant upstairs. But when he really went up to the second floor, he found that no one in the group was awake. He didn't drink. He just sat there and fell asleep. Everyone was very intimate. Coco and Feng Shang's heads were touching, and their bunnies were hanging on the ground. Perhaps it would be difficult for outsiders to understand. But as Feng Yi's assistant, he wasn't surprised at all when he saw this scene. Because she knew. This group of people was too tired. Any industry related to the internet was different from other ordinary industries. The pressure was great. Another public figure. He had to pay attention to his every word and action. Even if it was ordinary words, they would be misinterpreted by others into another meaning. Some people thought that they liked her, but it had already made them breathless. Insomnia is the norm. Many times. Feng Yi was even more afraid that someone among them would have psychological problems. Chapter 1382. Feng Yi glanced at the few of them and lifted his chin towards the little assistant. The little assistant understood and immediately placed the things on the table. She raised her hand and adjusted the temperature of the air conditioner to the best. The weather in the north was especially cold at this time of the year. No one knew when it started snowing outside. Phony glanced at the calendar hanging on the wall. He hadn't expected the new year to pass so quickly. Both Little Spade and Uncle Ian had been here for a long time. Since the competition was over. It was time to find something for them to do. At the very least, he had to be the face of Supreme Alliance so that he could lure the newcomers in. After all, he was a businessman. The corners of Foam Yee's mouth curled up. He was back to being the smiling fox manager Foam. The little assistant shivered at the side. She felt as though her days of working overtime were coming back. Even so, when they left, they closed the door carefully. But Chin Mo had already woken up when the door was pushed open. He had been too lazy to get up since he was carrying someone in his arms. As for who he was carrying, there wasn't a need to elaborate, everyone knew. But very quickly, he kissed the person in his arms awake, his breath by her ear. His voice was calm. "Are you pretending to be asleep because you're worried I'll settle the score with you?" Bojio trembled from the kiss, opening her eyes. "Brother Mo, let's not talk about such an unfriendly topic when everyone is asleep." "Oh. Tell me, what topic is friendly?" Chin Mo smiled, reaching out to push her hair to the side. His long legs were wrapped around her long hair. They could lie down horizontally, but Chin Mo was too tall, so he had to lean sideways. Bojio's arms were still around his waist. No one knew how comfortable it was to hug the Almighty to sleep, hence, she had taken advantage of him when no one was paying attention. But now, it seemed like this position was disadvantageous to her. But long before she came, she had thought of a strategy. "For example, let's talk about the other reward you promised me." The two of them always seemed to fall in love in a different way than others. Chin Mo glanced at the person who was raising her eyebrows at him. He reached out and pinched her face. "Keep your claws. If you want a reward, get it. Don't do anything bad." Bojio watched regretfully as he pulled her hand out of his uniform. The Almighty was always so prideful. As his girlfriend, she couldn't even touch his abs. Without any bad things to do, Bojio could only lie there lazily. She looked like a hedonistic young master raised by a family, but she was a little listless. "You look like you're not interested in the reward I'm giving you." Chin Mo pinched the face again. Bojio replied seriously, "I don't show my emotions on my face." She was afraid of digging up her dark history. "Not bad, you are very calm," Chin Mo said slowly. Bojio found the Almighty's attitude strange. After all, no matter how she looked at it, it didn't seem like he was going to give her a reward. Instead, it seemed like he was trying to trick her. Chin Mo suddenly said, "Wait a minute." Bojio was confused. "What?" Chin Mo stood up from the sofa, standing sideways. Just this alone made him look suave. "It's not here, it's in the pocket of my jacket." Bojio paused, her hair sticking up as she stood up. Her handsome face looked a little cute. Was there really a reward? It wasn't a dark history. Chapter 1383. Chin Mo knew that someone would be curious. His lips curved upwards as he allowed her to follow him casually. Bojio wasn't afraid since it wasn't her dark history. Chin Mo swept her a glance, his smile deepening. He held on to his jacket, his long legs leaning against the wall as he hooked his fingers in Bojio's direction. Bojio walked over. "What is it?" Chin Mo lifted his chin, gesturing for her to reach into his pocket. For her to take it herself? Her interest was piqued. She reached her hand in. The moment she saw it, her ears drooped. It was the photo that had been placed in the villa. She knew she had a boyfriend like the Almighty. She couldn't rely on him to give her a diamond ring. The Almighty's favorite thing to do was to dig up her dark history. She would have to find time to ask her fans in the future. What should she do if her boyfriend had a special interest? "I'm waiting online." It's urgent. Even though it was fun to watch the Almighty speak viciously about his childhood because of jealousy, it wasn't good. However, it wouldn't be good if he recovered his memory. What would they do then? That would be another dark history. Bo-jio made up her mind. Before the Almighty regained his memory, she would explain everything clearly. Shin Mo saw that she didn't take the photo out and had a helpless expression on her face. He suddenly pulled her over and lightly touched her face with one hand. Are you an idiot? Take it out and flip it. What else could there be in a photo? She couldn't flip it and turn it into a ring. Bo-jio paused, her gaze landing on the back of the photo. There was a line of beautiful black letters. It wasn't long, just 7 words. You are the joy of youth. You should know what it means when you read it backwards. Shin Mo lowered his lids, the lights falling. The night sky outside the window seemed to have become a foil for him. In that instant, it was as though all that was left in her ears was a flowing voice. It wasn't loud or soft, but it was full of substance. The youngster I like is you. It wasn't an ordinary confession. Otherwise, it wouldn't have appeared at the back of the photo. Bo-jio tightened her grip on Shin Mo's sleeves, the thought rushing through her mind. Shin Mo smiled, planting a kiss on her forehead. It's me. That one word explained everything. The Almighty had regained his memory. All of his memories. Bo-jio didn't know how to describe her feelings. Her mind was blank. She reached out and hugged him without a word. This time, he really was hers. From the inside out. Completely and utterly. After the joy, there was a muffled voice. You didn't even reply to the letters I wrote to you. Shin Mo tucked her hair behind her ears. It's my fault. At that time, I sent them every day, and I even wrote a lot of wrong words. Grandfather Butler laughed at me for a long time. Shin Mo sighed. That's why you wrote the letter. Why would a small hacker write a letter? Bo-jio felt that she had been too immature back then. The television series caused me trouble. They say that letters can make people feel sincere. Now that I think about it, emails are the most reliable. At least when you read it, it will appear as read. Even if you didn't look at it, I know you didn't receive it. You aren't that stupid. Shin Mo couldn't hold back his smile as he listened to her soft complaints. Bo-jio paused. Wait a minute, this wasn't the right topic. She was the one who mocked the Almighty. Chapter 1384. How did it feel to have such an intelligent and vicious boyfriend? Kiss him until he stopped talking. That was what Bo-jio did. She reached out and pressed onto Shin Mo's back, her lips lifting slightly as she leaned forward. Shin Mo hadn't expected this kiss. It was obviously a sudden kiss. But very quickly, he regained control of the situation. He pushed her away, his forehead pressing against hers. I have something for you. There was more. Bo-jio arched a brow. Shin Mo threw something over. A dark red household register? Bo-jio didn't have the chance to speak. Just then, the voice beside her ear rang again. I didn't say that I was going to give you me, this is the real thing. Bo-jio glanced up. How did you take out your household register? It should be more complicated to be in the military. Is it that difficult to leave it to your mother-in-law? Shin Mo kissed her eyes casually. Bo-jio coughed uncomfortably, her ears turning slightly red. Why did the Almighty say mother-in-law so naturally? But with the Almighty's household register, she could really tie him down. A domineering CEO would always take the household register of his sweetheart. From a certain point of view, it suited her. Of course, if the Almighty hadn't said anything else, the world would have been a better place. So, should we go home and have a good chat about your cheating during the competition? Bo-jio, she had indeed underestimated the Almighty's ability to hold a grudge. The result of the chat. It was after they returned home. He carried her onto the sofa and coaxed her to say many embarrassing things. She didn't last long under the intoxicating force. His heavy breathing and his handsome face, which was covered in a thin layer of sweat, made it hard for anyone to reject him, be it a man or a woman. Bojo wasn't sure when they had ended. She could only hear his pulse and heartbeat slowing down. Before the numbness in her body faded, he carried her again. The temperature in the room rose once more. She could hear the sound of water splashing on the floor. The mist, mixed with the sound, drifted over from her shapely lips. He was probably afraid someone would hear it. Bojo bit down on the sound instinctively. He chuckled lightly. Do you think the servants are still here? There's only us here. Bojo trembled. Slow, slow down. But he didn't know that such a voice would make people even more uncontrollable. Chin-mo thought she would never know how beautiful she was. Because her skin was too white and delicate. So every time, a thin layer of powder would appear on her body. Moreover, her face was always so hedonistic, with her hair sticking to the back of her ears. Especially when her clothes were wet, it would only make people want her even more, suddenly. Hot kisses fell on his body like flower petals. Bojo closed her eyes, enduring the pain. Good girl. The man's voice was deep, and when he disappeared into the night, he seemed even more sexy and seductive. When it was close to dawn, she realized that his hand was under her pajamas again. Bojo said, tired. His kiss landed beside her ear. Be good, apply the medicine. It's good for your body. Medicine? Bojo didn't have time to think about it. All he could feel was that person's gentle movements and the medicinal fragrance in his breath. Chin-mo was indeed holding medicine, specially prepared by someone. Such a prescription was rare. He had to find an old Chinese doctor, who used precious medicinal herbs gathered from the Qinghai Tibet line. It was indeed good for girls and could nourish their bodies. But it wasn't easy to get the medicine. The Chinese doctor had a strange temper. He couldn't get it even if he had money. Chin-mo had specially asked for it after he had quarreled with a certain someone about the medicine. The old Chinese doctor had thought that this young master must have done something evil, which was why he wanted to use this medicine to treat his injuries. After a few times, the old Chinese doctor then realized that this person was too affectionate and was afraid that he would hurt his lover, which was why he wanted the medicine. According to him, my lover is a little small. At the start, the old Chinese doctor blew his beard. A little small, how small? The main point was that this young master wasn't that old. Chin-mo chuckled lightly. She's an adult, she's going to university this year. That's good. The old Chinese doctor finally agreed to give him the medicine. But in the end, because Chin-mo was too good at chess, he would always win a game against the old man. He really couldn't find an excuse. However, the old Chinese medicine doctor could tell that this man really cared about his little girlfriend. For successful people like them, many people said that money was important, but to them, time was the most important. But no matter how he tried to find an excuse to delay, Chin-mo was patient and even personally checked every medicinal herb. This kind of cooking could only be done by a person who was in so much pain that it penetrated into their bones. The old Chinese doctor thought that if Chin-mo brought his girlfriend over the next time, he would definitely tell the girl to cherish him. There weren't many good guys these days. Indeed, there weren't many. Because honestly speaking, there weren't many boyfriends who helped their girlfriends dress. Bojo stretched her back lazily, her hair messy. Her voice was low and hoarse, as if she had just woken up. She had a natural arrogance, but because of her perfect voice, it wasn't annoying. Water. Put on your clothes first, there will be water. Chin-mo had long legs, he only needed to bend slightly when he spoke. His voice was close to her ear, deep and magnetic, like a feather that brushed past her heart. She couldn't help but admire him, his words made her soften. All right, put on your clothes first. Cuffs. In the end, Almighty Chin couldn't take it anymore and took action himself. Bojo was well versed in being served. The moment the Almighty opened his mouth, she handed her wrist over. Take the Almighty's clothes for example. No matter how she dressed, he would always think of her as a little ruffian. He had been like that when they had been young. The two of them had completely different styles. She belonged to the free-spirited group. He was so spotless, it made one suspect that he didn't have any childhood fun. But the Almighty didn't let down the name of a beast in human clothing. Bojo glanced at the man in the white shirt, looking elegant and aloof. Even his slender fingers were so beautiful they seemed to glow. Who would have expected someone with such an aura to be more ferocious in bed? Chapter 1385. That reminded her of the scene in the bathroom the night before. Especially the words he had said to coax her. Bojo's ears flushed. She broke into a playboy smile and pressed her lips against his ear. She wanted to take it back. Unexpectedly, before she could move her lips, his breath settled. His eyes dimmed. How many times have I told you to stop teasing me? Bojo instinctively sensed danger and was about to retreat. However, he pressed her back onto the soft double bed in an instant. Even the clothes that he had just put on were ripped apart by him. She heard the sound of buttons falling to the floor. What followed was his aura gradually becoming heavier. But in the end, he didn't do anything to her. Bojo couldn't take it anymore. He buried his face into her neck, his voice so sexy it sent shivers down her spine. Are you trying to kill me, MMH? Bojo didn't move anymore. The heat from his body was a clear indication of how firm he was. If I wasn't worried your body wouldn't be able to take it, do you think I would be so tolerant? He opened his mouth and bit her neck. Bojo trembled. She hugged the person on top of her. Her blurry memory started to clear up. The Almighty had indeed applied medicine on her and it was in that place. Bojo blushed. She was completely obedient. She decided to take advantage of him like this. But this was the downside of being familiar with each other. In the past, it had been easy for her to tease the Almighty. Now, he wouldn't let her kiss him even if she teased him a little. If she teased him more harshly, he would hug her directly. In the end, she would be the one with a sore back. Gradually, the dryness in her body dissipated. That was when Bojo realized that this position was indeed good for her. After all, it was rare to see the Almighty so dependent in someone's arms. She couldn't do anything about it. Her boyfriend had the heart of a princess. Bojo smiled, reaching out to touch his hair. Be obedient. Those 3 words were very light. He reached out and pulled her up by the wrist. Just like that, he carried her to the wardrobe. Bojo's legs were long and fair, giving off a messy sense of beauty. She was a good woman. She wasn't even close. There was no immortal chi on his body either. On the contrary, she was extremely beautiful. Even his eyes were filled with black mist. It was completely different from Qin Mo's aura. Someone once said that. Almighty Qin definitely liked those kind of pure and gentle women. After all, these people all had immortal chi on them. If they saw this scene, they would definitely be shocked. What Almighty Qin liked were long, narrow eyes, a mole with tears, long, snow-white legs, and a natural charm. All of these could not be compared to one word, her. Yes, he liked her. With this in mind, Qin Mo lowered his head and kissed a certain someone. Bojo wasn't bothered, her fingers brushing past the clothes hanging on it. He had probably brought her over so that she could choose for herself. Who knew that the Almighty didn't mean it that way? He picked a sweater and put it on her head. It's warm. Bojo had always prioritized her looks. Brother Mo, I'm not handsome anymore. F***ck, wait a minute, what are you doing to my hair? After nearly 10 minutes of torment. After being dressed as a bear, Bojo finally regained her freedom. But before she could take 2 steps, he arched a brow. Little Bojo. Bojo tilted her head, her pure black down jacket and red checkered scarf accentuating her handsome face. She had the aura of a manga character. MMH? Since you have a boyfriend, shouldn't you do some actions? Chin Mo was still wearing a long trench coat today, his aura naturally elegant and noble. Even his words carried a hint of indifference. Bo-jio glanced down at his empty right hand. Oh, he replied and walked over. Brother Mo, Bo-jio spoke slowly. Next time, if you want to hold hands, just say so. Little Princess Chin was still as arrogant as ever. She didn't wait for Chin Mo to raise his brow and tugged his hand over. I'm hungry, Madame Zhang isn't around and it's affecting my growth. Is your boyfriend just for show? Chin Mo glanced over. Bo-jio replied matter-of-factly, then cook for me. She was hoping that the Almighty would say no so that she could show off her instant noodle cooking skills in front of the Almighty. With such a cool skill, if she didn't show it off, it wouldn't be in line with her life goals. Let's go to the cafeteria. Today, there's your favorite beef and bean buns. They're fresh out of the oven. There was a canteen in the military compound. Yesterday, they stayed at the Chin family's main residence. He could indeed go to the cafeteria to eat. Bo-jio's stomach growled when she heard the words beef and bean bun. It was a natural reaction. Those who had never eaten here probably didn't understand how delicious the food in the courtyard was. Because there were many old leaders living here. Therefore, they followed the rules of the older generation. The fermented flour had to be fermented overnight. The beef was the freshest. After it was properly mixed, the scallions, ginger, garlic, and pepper oil were poured over it, and the piercing aroma would come out. Not to mention, there were also scalded long beans as supplementary ingredients. After mixing them well, they were placed on a hot steamer and steamed in a traditional steamer for half an hour. When it was taken out of the pot, the skin was thin and the stuffing was big. When he bit into it, his mouth was filled with fragrance. It was just that the younger generation in the military compound had all gone to the army. They rarely ate in the cafeteria. Previously, after staying at the Chin family's main residence, Bo-jio couldn't forget Madame Zhang's food. Secondly, she missed the meat buns in the cafeteria. Now, she was finally back. With delicious food in front of her, Bo-jio temporarily cast aside the thought of showing off her skills. She just wanted the Almighty to leave quickly. After all, if he was late, he might not be able to eat it. Bo-jio didn't know that long before she woke up, Chin Mo had called the chef at the cafeteria and asked him to make an extra basket of meat buns. As for why he was walking so slowly. Of course, there was a reason. Very quickly, Bo-jio felt that something was amiss. The old men who had seen her previously walked out with their adjutant. Their voices were loud and clear. Little Chin, you brought your little friend over for dinner again? It's not a little friend today, Chin Mo replied, pressing her head onto his shoulder, his smile gentle. It's my girlfriend. Bo-jio was caught off guard. That was her expression. The old men inhaled sharply. Hadn't she been his little brother in the past? How did she become his girlfriend now? Almighty Chin gave a good explanation slowly. In the past, she was shy and didn't want to admit our relationship so quickly. Now that we're close, it should be fine after I tell the grandpas. This was the first time the old men had made a mistake. They started to crowd around Bo-jio. You're so mean. The little friend has become his girlfriend, no wonder your brother has to find a partner. Jio, just say it, when are you going to let us attend the wedding? Listen to your boyfriend, understand? Little Chin might seem cold but he treats people well. In the future, if little Chin insults me, you have to reprimand him. As a girlfriend, I have to control my boyfriend. That's right. The direction of the conversation was getting more and more out of hand. Chin Mo arched a brow. This was probably the only time Almighty Chin hadn't expected this outcome. Bo-jio was elated, holding on to her little Princess Chin's hand, full of aggression. Grandpas, don't worry, after the meal, when we get home, I'll control him. How can he insult others so easily? Chin insults, Chin tricks. She couldn't be blamed. The Almighty had a venomous tongue. That was why people loved and hated him so much. Along the way, Bojo was smiling. Chin Mo smirked, not saying a word, the corners of his lips lifting slightly. This idiot, didn't she realize what she had just said? Words like that would only be said after marriage, right? Perhaps, this was what dating was like. Inexplicably, it would feel sweet. Including when she was eating. It was the same. Bojo had always been a fast eater, even though her posture was elegant, she couldn't slow down. Chin Mo sat in front of her, wiping her mouth and taking food for her, much more than himself. This breakfast was really too much for him. Bojo couldn't move. Chin Mo pulled her over and massaged her stomach for her. Even his breath carried the refreshing scent of mint. Bojo smiled, thinking that it would be great if it was like this in the future. There probably weren't many people like this. When she had been young, he had been worried that she would get indigestion, so he would always rub her stomach. Now that she had grown up, he would still rub her stomach after she ate too much. In reality, even if the old men didn't say it, she would still treat him well. There were many people in this world, countless. Chin Mo, there was only one. But the two of them couldn't stay like this for the whole day. The Asian Cup had just ended. This was the time when the media and fans wanted to understand them. As the captain of Supreme Alliance, if Chin Mo didn't attend, it wouldn't be justifiable. At this moment, Feng Yi was a successful sly manager. He called young Master Chin again, but he was hung up. He called Bojo directly. Chin Mo had just finished washing the fruits, his back straight as he took a piece of paper, wiping his fingers slowly, gesturing for Bojo to hold the phone for him. Bojo took the apple, her other hand holding the phone, pressing it against the side of his handsome face. Feng Yi lowered his voice as he explained the process and pros and cons. In the end, he concluded, you have to participate in this interview. Don't worry, I won't ask you to speak too much and it won't affect your time with Little Spade. It's just a 5-minute interview. I'm not going, Chin Mo replied lazily, reverting back to his young master's temperament. Feng Yi inhaled deeply, telling himself not to stoop to his level. This wasn't the first time this person didn't like to show his face, competition was an exception. He had thought that after the Asian Cup, the Almighty would cooperate with him. But from the looks of it, he had too much. Yes. Yes. Chapter 1386. Before Feng Yi could finish, Chin Mo interrupted him. Chin Mo interrupted him, his voice nonchalant. Ask the organizers if they want to bring a family member. Little Spade? Feng Yi chuckled lightly. They definitely require a family member. Bojo, Chin Mo glanced at the person holding the phone, knowing that she had heard it as well. He smiled. What time is it? 1 p.m., on the top floor of the club. There had been people who wanted to interview them and this time, their wish came true. Chin Mo tilted his head. You heard it, the organizers require a family member. Bojo, just like that, the Almighty brought Bojo to the company. She wasn't really his family member. Anyway, she was the driver when they came here. When they reached the ground floor of the club, it was filled with fans. This was probably the effect of the Asian Cup. It would be too eye-catching if the two of them entered. Chin Mo was about to call the security guards to control the situation. On the other side, Bojo pushed the door open and walked out. She stuffed a hand into her pocket, her scarf covering her face. Chin Mo arched a brow. Bojo looked at him in confusion. She had already opened the door but the Almighty wasn't alighting. Chin Mo exchanged glances with a certain someone. When he heard the screams, Big Spade, my hubby, I want to give birth to your child, he broke into a sudden laugh. Your popularity isn't bad. His cold voice didn't sound like a compliment. Bojo was confused. What was wrong with little Princess Chin? He definitely didn't hold hands. MMH. With that in mind, she turned and held onto the door frame with one hand. She planted a kiss on Chin Mo's face before tugging his wrist and walking forward happily. Chin Mo listened to the commotion and looked at the person who was dragging him forward. There was a faint smile in the bottom of his eyes. When the fans saw this scene, they had mixed feelings. Especially Chin Mo's fans. Their almighty had been coaxed out of the car by Big Spade, hadn't he? From the posture just now, it seemed like Big Spade was the more aggressive one. She turned to look at the stunned Spade fans and coughed lightly. Forgive me, our almighty Chin isn't like this usually. He actually coaxed by his girlfriend. Shameless to the point of making one's hair stand on end. But for some reason, he still looked so handsome. Even though he had a cold personality, when he saw Spade Z, he would reveal a mesmerizing smile. Not to mention, when Big Spade held his hand, he even gave his fans a bonus. Welfare? Wait a minute. Almighty Chin would never give out benefits. But what was going on now? He actually stopped in front of a group of people. Bo Jiao was confused as well. She arched a brow. Who knew? Chin Mo didn't look at her. Instead, he looked at the girl standing at the side. Do you want an autograph? Nod. Of course he wanted it. The fans were going crazy. Chin Mo reached out and took the carbon pen from one of them. He lowered his lids and wrote slowly while saying, "There's something you need to pay attention to." Yes. Almighty Chin, speak. What do I need to pay attention to? They were so close to each other, and his gay friend had even laughed at him. If he came, he definitely wouldn't be able to get Almighty Chin's autograph. Almighty Chin was the kind of person who didn't show his face for 100 years, let alone an autograph. Now, he felt as though he was in a dream. Chin Mo had already finished signing. He took a long time because he added a prefix, Z's boyfriend, Chin Mo. This autograph was really, Bo Jiao's expression was indescribable. Chin Mo's fans coughed once more, trying to preserve their almighty's image. People in love are like this, it's true. Spade Z's fans nodded. No one in love would sign like this. Almighty Chin was really unprecedented. Chin Mo's fans knew that their almighty's actions would definitely go down in history. Fortunately, no one exposed him. Reality proved that even if no one exposed him, young Master Chin would follow through with whatever he wanted to do. For example, he could have left after signing the autograph. Unexpectedly, he didn't leave. Instead, he stood there and smiled. It's not a big deal, but... With that, he pulled Bo Jiao in front of him. This person can only have children with me. As for the husband that you call him, it's impossible. The fans who were disqualified paused for a moment. So Almighty Chin had stopped to give them an autograph just to tell them this? This time, the Chin Mo's fans didn't know what to say. They could only cover their faces to express their emotions. Their almighty Chin was really arrogant and full of jealousy. Very quickly, this scene became a trending topic on a certain blog. Zhao Sanpang, who happened to be doing a live stream today, saw it. Our brother Zhao had quite a number of fans. His fans would tease him. Hey, brother Zhao, you're even fatter today. But just a moment ago, the atmosphere was different. That was because the fans were asking a different question. Brother Zhao, when are you going to find a girlfriend? Zhao Sanpang wore his headphones, playing games while looking at the screen. He waved his hands. No, if I find one, what about my female fans? I have to be responsible for them. Brother Zhao, wake up. F***ck, Brother Zhao, how can you have female fans? You must be dreaming again. We are all blue avatars. Look at the logo, it's a guy. To be honest, Brother Zhao, even your archenemy Chin Mo has started dating. The only person I want to turn gay is in a relationship. Why aren't you doing anything? Zhao Sanpang's fans knew that Chin Mo's name was his explosive point. Once it was mentioned, it would explode. As expected, Zhao Sanpeng stopped playing games. Manage, lock the screen, lock the person who wants to turn gay for Qin Mo. I only want straight men. F***ck, Qin Mo, that guy is a walking dog food. The fans immediately started shouting 666, he must have been provoked. Old Zhao, don't cry. It's okay if you don't have a girlfriend, you can hug your chubby self. Zhao Sanpeng was furious. I'm going to hug my head, I'm going to challenge Qin Mo to a duel tonight. I'll let him show off his dog food all day long. Who knew that as soon as he finished speaking? The bullet screen was full of comments. All of them had the same sentence. Don't go, I'm afraid you'll be beaten until you call me daddy. Zhao Sanpeng felt like he couldn't continue living like this. Why were other people's fans cute, while his were a bunch of rough guys who spoke the truth? No way. He had to post Qin Mo's shameless public display of affection in the WeChat group. The most handsome man in the world, your Lord Fatty, are you there? Come out, come out. Lin Chen Tao Tao, F***ck, I'm impressed that you change your name every day. The most handsome man in the world, your Lord Fatty, you flatter me. Did you see Weibo today? Don't you think someone is especially shameless? I saw it, there's no limit to how shameless he is. I watched it with a chicken wing in my mouth. After that, I really wanted to beat someone up. I don't want to say anything, I just want to call 110. Someone is abusing a kind dog like me. That signature is really enough, what do you guys think? I think we should tag someone, Qin Mo, I think someone should send a red packet. They're already dating, right? Qin Mo, send a double, since there are two of them, they should send a double. Forget about Little Spade, her boyfriend will send it, Qin Mo, it was probably because his phone kept ringing. Bo Jiu glanced over. It was a rare sight to see the Almighty sending a WeChat message. She wanted to see it. He wasn't going to let her. He blocked her with one hand and lifted his chin. Sit over there. Really, he was guarding against her like a wolf. Bo Jiu arched a brow. While he was lowering his lids, she pressed down on his wrist. She took the chance to take a few glances. Qin Mo chuckled. What is it? Mrs. Qin, are you checking on me? Bo Jiu hadn't expected such content. Instantly, she felt like she was at a disadvantage. She picked up the mineral water and took a sip. When she glanced over, the Almighty's fingers moved. Are you really going to send it? The Almighty didn't seem like the type to send red packets. It was a trap. As expected. Bo Jiu glanced at the screen again. The red packet had indeed been sent, but the name of the red packet was infuriating. Dog food. Bo Jiu could foresee that the Almighty's group would explode with the words Qin Mo is shameless. Qin Mo, on the other hand, was extremely calm. After sending the red packet, he kept his phone as though he wasn't the one who had started the fire. Bo Jiu couldn't help but take out her phone and enter WeChat. Qin Mo. If you have the guts, don't leave WeChat and don't turn off your phone. This was Zhao Sanpeng. Even through the screen, Bo Jiu could feel the resentment in his voice. Honestly, the hatred the Almighty had garnered today was enough for her to challenge a beast king. How did it feel to have such a boyfriend? He probably wanted to laugh. When the interviewer came in, he saw the faint smile on the youngster's face. It was probably because of her long legs as she sat lazily on the chair with a mineral water bottle in her hand. Even though he knew she was a girl, he couldn't help but admire her handsomeness. Bo Jiu glanced over slightly, her gaze landing on the employee's name tag. She stood up, stuffing a hand into her pocket as though she was about to leave. Qin Mo reached out and tugged on her sleeve. Bo Jiu, MMH? Wasn't he going to do an interview? She wanted to take a stroll. Qin Mo replied nonchalantly, the organizers have arranged seats for the family members. The interviewer immediately replied, that's right, Almighty Z. Even though this is a solo interview, we hope for the family members to be around. The interviewer bit the bullet as such situations were rare. But if she still couldn't understand Almighty Chin's gaze, she wouldn't be able to stay in the industry. But she had to thank Almighty Chin for this. The worst-case scenario was that Almighty Chin wouldn't be able to come. Unexpectedly, Almighty Chin wasn't the only one who came, even Spade Z was here. Their show had yet to start and they were already on fire. Bo Jiao had always been cooperative with others. This was probably due to her upbringing. She had been like this ever since she was young. She might be cold but she wasn't emotionless. Her father had taught her to respect everyone's career since she was young. Hence, even now, Bo Jiao wouldn't put anyone in a difficult position. She sat there, the floor-to-ceiling window behind her. Qin Mo had asked Assistant Zhang to send Princess over. She hugged him, intending to play with the cat for a while. Princess was infuriated. In order to express his anger, he kept purring. But this person wasn't threatened by him at all. Princess could tell that his master had spoiled a certain someone to the point of being out of control. He wouldn't stand up for him. It was better for him to adapt to the circumstances and be a well-behaved cat. After all, it wasn't bad being hugged by this person. The interviewer was satisfied with the arrangement. Even though Spade Z didn't show her face and had her back turned, everyone knew who she was just by looking at her back. Besides, the aloof youngster hugging the cat and wearing a black sweater was too handsome. As a mature woman, she was about to turn gay. He probably noticed the interviewer's gaze. Qin Mo's long fingers tapped the table, his voice slow. Not interviewing anymore? Almighty Qin, I'm sorry, the interviewer said as she gestured to the cameraman who was following them. Qin Mo seemed to be answering some questions, but in his heart, he wasn't just on guard against men, he had to be on guard against women as well. Speaking of Almighty Qin's relationship problems, it's what the fans want to know the most. The interviewer seemed to be chatting casually, but in reality, she was stunned by Almighty Qin, who was emitting a cold aura. For some reason, Almighty Qin seemed scary. Almighty Qin and Almighty Z, which one of you confessed first? Is it convenient for you to tell me? Bo Jiao heard the question too. Her hand that was caressing the cat's back paused. Was there a need to ask? Of course it was her. She had wanted to buy little Princess Qin when she was young, but he would always frown when he saw her. It was obvious that he didn't have any feelings for her. But before she could finish her thought, she heard the word, me. The interviewer was slightly surprised. Almighty Qin doesn't seem like someone who would confess to others. She didn't have a choice, she's stupid. Even if I gave her my entire body, she wouldn't be able to sense it. I could only confess. Qin Mo's tone was obviously different from before. The interviewer laughed. Judging from Almighty Z's gaming style, she doesn't seem stupid. Almighty Qin might have been too subtle and Almighty Z might not have understood it. That's possible. After all, she was too young back then and didn't know how to read. Qin Mo didn't just answer the question but also threw a stone for the interviewer to continue asking. As expected. She was too young back then. Gosh, did you and Almighty Z know each other since you were young? The interviewer felt that she had dug out a huge piece of information. Qin Mo replied nonchalantly, is it strange? No, it's just that during the Asian Cup, the fans saw the interaction between Almighty Z and Almighty Hoshino and thought that they knew each other since they were young. Qin Mo smiled. Everyone should know the truth now. Chapter 1387. I do have something to remind him of. Qin Mo glanced up casually. There was a smile on his lips but it didn't seem warm at all. It's here. It's here. The female host was extremely excited. She had a premonition that the fans would definitely be concerned about such a question. After all, everyone had seen the scene at the Asian Cup. What is it? Almighty Qin, can you elaborate? The female host passed the microphone over, her eyes filled with gossip. Chin Mo lifted the corner of his lips, his voice slow. Hoshino, you see Shin has been waiting for you for a long time. When are you going to have a good talk with him? The female host was confused. After all, she had predicted thousands of results but not this one. Almighty Chin, are you saying that Almighty Xian and Almighty Hoshino, wait a minute. She had to calm down. She had to watch her words. This was the only way she could dig out more information. But before she could react, Chin Mo spoke again. His tall figure stood up, his aura of abstinence thick. I don't mean anything. 5 minutes are up. My girlfriend and I are going to meet the parents. Please go ahead. The female host wanted to continue asking but she didn't have the guts. Beside her was the CEO's secretary. When she heard Boss Chin's words, she smiled lightly and led the interviewers out. The Chin Club had always been polite to anyone who came to cooperate. But who could understand the frustration of a reporter who only heard half of the information? The female host and cameraman felt the same way. Bo Jiu, who was hugging Princess, stood up after they left. Brother Mo, you did it on purpose. When Chin Mo saw her face, he turned and smiled. What are you doing on purpose? You purposely led everyone to misunderstand the relationship between Hoshino and Yusishin. Bo Jiu muttered softly. That's too shameless. Chin Mo narrowed his eyes and pulled her over. I'm shameless? Bo Jiu opened her mouth but didn't say anything. Since I'm already so shameless. Chin Mo held her waist. Why don't I be more shameless? Hey. Bo Jiu felt his hand reaching in. Her waist softened. This is the office. Chin Mo leaned forward and kissed her neck, his voice deep. Don't worry, no one will come in. Wasn't this a question of who was there? Bo Jiu's hands were already weak from the kiss. The princess took the opportunity to run away. She didn't even have her only cover anymore. Behind him was the desk where he had sat and signed countless contracts. His back was pressed against it, and he could feel the coolness of the business. There seemed to be some papers on the table, and they were all scattered on the ground. The temperature gradually rose. When two people are together, they become addicted to everything. Probably because they always wanted to be close to each other. Or perhaps it was because of the fatal attraction that had existed since the beginning. It was just that he had some misgivings in the past. Now, there seemed to be nothing to worry about. A numb sensation spread from her tailbone, accompanied by a pleasant peppermint scent. It was the unique scent of a man. It was as if it had been smashed into pieces, infecting her body bit by bit. You are mine. You can only be mine. Bo Jiu listened to his possessive words, her back turning hot. After all, the Almighty had never done this before. Chapter 1388. The numbness didn't dissipate even after his hand left her body. Bo Jiu felt that this couldn't go on. Every time, the Almighty would use his charm on her. She couldn't just let herself sink into it. Actually, this time, he didn't do anything because he had considered her body. But the more he did that, the more she heard his panting beside her ear, the more numb her back felt. Less than a quarter of an hour had passed. The temperature in the room dipped. Only then did he pull her up and take her to wash her hands. Bo Jiu was always the one being taken care of. Seeing him tilt his head, she couldn't help but say, Brother Mo, why did you tell the host that you confessed first? I was the one who confessed first. I wanted to buy you the first time I saw you, but you rejected me. Chin Mo was speechless. It's not good for your reputation to say that the girl took the initiative. Chin Mo's attention wasn't on this, he was nonchalant. Bo Jiu paused. She was worried that it would damage her reputation. Was that why he said that? What should she do? She always liked the person standing in front of her more than the day before. He seemed to be like this forever. He thought a lot for her in places you didn't know. When they were alone, he was so arrogant that he wanted you to chase after him. But in front of outsiders, he was the one doing everything. "What are you doing, little Bojo?" Chin Mo helplessly allowed the person in front of him to hug his waist. There were still bubbles in his hands. He could only look at her and arched a brow. "Do something bad and I'll throw you out." Bojo laughed. She was full of playfulness, completely unbothered by his threat. Chin Mo looked at her hedonistic young master's behavior, and there was a smile in the depths of his eyes. It was rare for them to have such moments. They sat in a room. He read his contract while she played with her cat. Every 10 minutes or so, he would walk over and pinch her face or kiss her. Bojo felt that she was a qualified study boy. Even though she didn't need to make tea or pour water, she could help the Almighty during his boring times. If the people outside heard this, they would definitely die in a matter of minutes. How could their boss Chin ever be so bored? But the best thing today was that boss Chin didn't laugh coldly. Not even once. Even the people in the project department were in a daze. They had thought that their world would end after the Asian Cup. After all, it meant that boss Chin's attention would return to the company. It was the end of the year. For every department, this was a big sweep. He really didn't expect it. Boss would be so casual this year. As long as you don't go in and take up too much time, you won't be criticized. Young Master Joe, oh no, young Mistress Joe was truly a blessing to them. "Are you hungry?" Chin Mo glanced over. Bojo held a biscuit in her mouth. "It's all right. It seems like working with me is a little boring." Chin Mo put down the pen in his hand and raised his eyebrows. "Let's find something to do." Bojo lit up. That was possible. She had been watching the Almighty seriously signing the contract and wanted to go over and kiss him. The sense of abstinence in business made her heart itch. According to the usual CEO script, finding something to do must be intimate, right? However, this boyfriend of hers never played by the rules. "Your physics book is still with me. Come here and review." Bojo. Chapter 1389. Bojo felt weak and listless. On the other hand, the Almighty was as noble as ever. He held the pen in one hand and tapped her forehead. "Don't tell me you don't know how to do this question. Brother Mo, don't you think it's a waste to use our time together to revise physics?" Bojo tried to pull the atmosphere back. Chin Mo looked at her. "I don't think so." There was no way to continue chatting on this day. Bojo glanced at the physics knowledge in front of her. She couldn't help but reach out and grab her hair. She was the young lord of the hacker world, but she couldn't even handle a single lesson. Losing in this aspect was really, Chin Mo could probably tell that a certain someone was depressed. He liked to see her like this. It's time for the final exam. If you don't work hard and do well, how are you going to face your mother-in-law? It was supposed to be a simple test. Hearing the Almighty's words. Why did he really have a psychological burden? Wait a minute. A person like Movie Queen and probably wouldn't care about results. Bojo tilted her head. Movie Queen and cares about the results? In the past, I was always first, what do you think? Chin Mo asked slowly. Bojo became serious. Little did they know. What Chin Mo said was true. But there was something he didn't mention. When Chin Mo had been in high school, Movie Queen and had always wanted to grab her son to go shopping. Every time, her cold little boy would say, "Mom, I still have to study," as an excuse. At that moment, Movie Queen said, "It's okay if you fail." It could be seen that after such an analysis, little Bojo was tricked again. But this time, Chin Mo was the first to admit defeat. He just liked to see her depressed expression, but he didn't want her to forget to eat and sleep. Chin Mo frowned when he saw that she wasn't even drinking the water he fed her. He moved the physics book away. Bojo glanced up. "I'm not done. There's no need to look." Chin Mo's voice was calm. "I lied to you just now. My mom doesn't care about grades at all. You're her little almighty. She likes whatever you do. Bojio paused, twisting her neck with one hand. Phew, Brother Mo, be more sincere. But why did you suddenly want me to review? It couldn't be because of that inhuman interest again. Although the Almighty used this to tease her. But this time, he felt that there was something else. Nothing, Chin Mo replied casually. Bojio seemed to remember something. She glanced at his phone that had just been ringing. It was a call from the school. Chin Mo didn't hide anything. Bojio was confused. What did he say? It's about filling in the application form. Chin Mo placed the cup in front of her lips. Bojio was suddenly enlightened. Brother Mo, are you trying to get me into your university? No wonder he wanted her to review physics. After all, a university's admission score was unusually high. Chin Mo did not deny it. Bojio pulled her physics book back, intending to continue reading. Unexpectedly, Chin Mo reached out and blocked the page. I'm not going to look at it, your current results are fine. What if I fail? Bojio bit the tip of her pen. Let's see if it's safe. Chin Mo lifted her up, placing her on his long legs. It's fine if I fail, I'll transfer to whichever school you get into. It doesn't matter where I go. Bojio paused, drinking the water he fed her. Even the tip of her tongue was sweet. Chapter 1390. But his handsomeness only lasted for a second. The next second. But even so, you still have to read the physics book. Bojio, just as the two of them were in the office. The members of the Japanese team were shopping. Jiang City had the longest history in China. There were many places worth visiting. Moreover, the competition had already ended. There wasn't any psychological burden when they played. Of course, that was at the beginning. Later on, someone took off his mask when he was eating the tanghulu. The entire street of tobacco bags seemed to have been ignited. The youth was speechless. Hey, can't you keep a low profile? You know your face is more ostentatious. Vice captain and captain are more ostentatious. Why don't you say so? With that, his tone suddenly changed. He looked at the tanghulu in his hand, his eyes round and clear. Good news. It was so delicious. The youth snatched it over. The speed at which they avoided the fans was very fast. It could be seen that they were a group of experienced fans. Yusishin and Hoshino were nonchalant from the start to the end. Especially Yusishin. Before a certain idiot took off his mask, he had already entered the shop next door and picked out a paper fan with a Chinese flavor. It should look good with the kimono at home. After choosing, he realized that he didn't bring his wallet. He pursed his thin lips. He dialed a certain someone's number. The paper fan shop on the right, come over. Hoshino was wearing a mask too. He was wearing a pure white down jacket. The design was huge and there was a circle of pure black fur on the collar. Not many men could wear such clothes. But Hoshino was obviously an exception. His legs were too long. Coupled with the aura he had, any clothes on him would look like luxury brands. Hoshino didn't say much when he saw Yusishin calling him over. He just threw his wallet to him. Yusishin took it and gave 3 pieces to the cashier. It was a normal action. But it made the eyes of the surrounding girls who were shopping for paper fans light up. After all, in China, no man would buy paper fans. Besides some cosplayers, they were gay. But the aura of these two people didn't seem like cosplayers. Could they be a couple? They were all wearing masks. Yusishin noticed the gaze from the side but didn't say anything. He just smiled devilishly, making it hard for others to understand him. Most of the media who received the news were attracted away by the other members of the Japanese team. In other words, they were too busy chasing after their target and didn't realize that there was a bigger fish behind them. Of course, there were also lucky reporters who followed them. There was a new esports enthusiast. Because the camera he was carrying was too heavy, he couldn't run anymore. He wanted to order a stew to cook first. He didn't expect that as soon as he got the stew, he would be stopped by two people walking towards him. Believe big? Star God. Even though both of them were wearing masks. But for the Japanese fans who had been there for 5 years, it was a piece of cake to distinguish them. He couldn't care less about eating. He took the camera and walked around, blocking in front of Yusishin. He mustered up his courage. You must be Shinda. I'm a fan of Dongying and also a reporter of Cheng Entertainment. This is my ID. Due to the different regions, the cultural differences were also different. After he finished speaking, he added the word please at the end. Yusishin originally thought that most of the reporters had left. He didn't expect there to be one more. But to him, it wasn't a big deal. Chapter 1391. The reporter didn't expect Almighty Xian to be so easy to talk to. He was afraid that he would offend Almighty Xian if he asked too directly, so he could only change his method. It's like this: Almighty Xian probably hasn't seen Almighty Qin's interview. Almighty Qin said that you have been waiting for Almighty Hoshino for a long time. Cough, do you think he is right? Yusishin didn't have any reaction. Hoshino arched a brow. What did he mean? The reporter saw that Yusishin wasn't replying and wanted to cough again. Unexpectedly, Yusishin raised his hand and placed his arm on Hoshino's shoulder. He lifted the corners of his lips. Do you think he is right? The reporters were all stunned at that moment. He even forgot to press the camera button. When he came back to his senses, Yusishin had already taken a step forward. Almighty Hoshino was in the crowd too. But his voice could be heard. You did that on purpose, right? Isn't it good to verify Qin Mo's words? Heh, it's probably because you're too threatening. Hoshino, haven't you realized something? You and Z are too intimate. Yusishin was nonchalant. As a boyfriend, he shouldn't be happy to see such intimacy. Hoshino laughed lightly. As Z's boyfriend, shouldn't he be prepared for this? Z has always been likable. Yusishin, what's the meaning of that flaunting expression? He didn't want to shop anymore. Seriously, there wasn't much to shop. Yusishin narrowed his eyes. His slender figure was about to leave. If Hoshino hadn't pulled him back. Go over there and take a look. What are you looking at? Yusishin's young master's actions were devilishly handsome. Hoshino's voice was as gentle as usual. Don't you need to raise the little thing you brought back? I really don't understand whether you are the master or me. We don't have enough cat food. There's a shop over there, we can buy some. Yusishin didn't say much. After walking a few steps, he said faintly, you are more attentive to a cat than to me. Tobacco Bag Slanted Street was especially crowded at this time. There were sounds everywhere. In addition, they had to avoid the reporters and fans who might recognize them. Hence, Hoshino didn't hear what Yusishin said. She tilted her head. Her face was still covered by a mask, revealing only a pair of ink-like eyes. What did you just say? Nothing. Yusishin stuffed his hands into his coat pocket, acting like a rich young master. Where's the shop you mentioned? Hoshino walked forward. Why would someone who doesn't even know the cat food store bring a cat home? I met it when I was cleaning up the people. It was raining. I can't possibly get rid of the cat too. Yusishin said this casually. Hoshino could almost imagine the scene at that time. It was definitely a group of black-clothed men. He stood at the very front, looking so lazy that he didn't seem like he was here to capture anyone, but he was more sinister than anyone else. Of course, he didn't have to clear the place. But the actions of the fifth-generation head had never been difficult to understand. That was why he was able to subdue his subordinates and make them obedient. He must have seen a cat on the side of the road on a rainy day after cleaning up, so he opened his leather jacket with a cigarette in his mouth and carried the cat back into his arms. This person had no affinity with animals. He had seen him with a cat print on his chin. It was probably because his face was too ostentatious, so ostentatious that even the cat couldn't stand it. In addition, when he came back, he just threw the cat away. He was even more arrogant than the cat. In high school, this person could defeat a group of people alone. They would meet on the rooftop of the school and within a day, he would become the boss. He had been like this ever since he was young. He hated it when people said that he was beautiful. If anyone dared to talk about his looks, that person would be at the end of his life. Hoshino smiled. He pushed the door open and walked into the pet shop. Other than cat food, there was nothing else he wanted to buy. But the interview that the reporter mentioned. It seemed like he should take a look. Shin really felt aggrieved as the owner of the house. He switched off his phone. Shin Mo had better keep an eye on Z. But even if he didn't, there was nothing he could do. In China, Z couldn't do anything wrong. Shin was most worried that Shin Mo didn't have enough control over his side and Z would return to the Fifth Avenue. If that was the case, Hoshino would follow her. The young lord of the hackers. Honestly speaking, he was interested in the past. But now, he didn't have a good impression of her. Hoshino didn't know what he was thinking. He took a bag of cat food and passed it to Shin. How does it taste? Shin took it and placed a piece in his mouth. His expression was as arrogant as ever. Not bad. The people in the pet shop were all shocked. Such a handsome person just put cat food in his mouth? Hoshino paused and pinched his face. Spit it out. Spit what out? You're not the one asking me about the taste. It was obvious that Shin had forgotten where they were. Hoshino smiled helplessly. There was a smile in his voice. Hey, I asked you to smell it, not eat it. That's cat food. Shin, not wanting to talk was probably the portrayal of Shin, the big boss, today. Hoshino knew that he couldn't understand some Chinese. After picking a bag, he turned and asked, "Do you want another bag?" Shin scoffed. "One bag isn't enough for that stupid cat. I'm not buying it for it." Hoshino took out his wallet. His fingers were slender. "The extra bag is for you." Shin narrowed his eyes. "Do you want to fight?" "Sure." Hoshino took the bag. "Let's go back." The reporter who was eavesdropping outside rubbed his nose. It seemed like gay love was a lie. The internal situation in Japan wasn't peaceful. It was obvious between the vice captain and the captain. The vice captain didn't listen to the captain. But how should he write the topic? It was really difficult for this iron-willed newbie. No matter what, he had to post the photo online. Although Exionda put his hand on Hoshino's shoulder, he felt that he was joking. Buying cat food was more realistic. At least there was a conflict between the two of them. MMH. Right. That's right. Create a conflict. The newbie reporter felt that his idea was good. After all, there was a topic with a conflict. This was an unknown rule on the internet. Someone would definitely pay attention to it. After all, the vice captain was going to fight the captain one-on-one. The more he thought about it, the more he felt that it was a good idea. After posting the photo, the newbie reporter decided to give the two of them some space and didn't continue to follow up. After about 3 minutes, he went on Weibo to take a look. The scene he imagined didn't happen at all. Instead, a bunch of people were saying, "Ah ah ah. Let's go buy cat food together. It's so loving. I'm definitely on the Hoshino CP." Chapter 1392. The public display of affection had been going around the internet the entire day. She had assumed it was over. But the more Bojio looked at the household register that the Almighty had given her, the more she felt there was something in it. She took some time to put on her uniform before heading downstairs. After the interview, the crowd had dispersed. Supreme Alliance's official fans had a sense of order. They were more enthusiastic than anyone else when they visited. But they also understood that it wasn't good to stay here. Hence, after the event ended, the fans packed up their banners and went back to edit. Almighty Chin's words and actions were enough for a year's worth of love videos. Unbeknownst to them, in the evening not long after they left, a youngster walked down. A young man walked down. Although he was wearing a hat and a mask, his eyes were very special. She opened the Lamborghini's door and locked it. Activate voice recognition. Voice recognition activated. After the intelligent system connected to the internet, it saw its master's face in the rear mirror. The car shuddered inexplicably, an indescribable sense of familiarity. As expected. Bo Jiao unbuttoned her jacket and arched a brow. I'm here to analyze something. Master, if it's about your boyfriend, you don't have to look for me. Little Blackie's voice was calm, but after the system's analysis, its master was here to flaunt her affection again. Why was master still harassing it even after leaving the army? Didn't she have a bunch of fans online? Go and look for them. As a single car, it was under a lot of pressure. Bo Jiao tilted her body, a mischievous smile on her face. It's up to me, not you. Little Blackie, have I been treating you too well recently, MMH? Do you have to make me listen? Can I play a song for you? Master, you humans are so noble. When I found this song that day, I felt like it was written about me. Little Blackie sang the lyrics. I'll be waiting downstairs in 3 minutes. If your boyfriend isn't obedient, I'll chase him out. If you're lonely, I'll talk to you. Bo Jiao laughed. Enough, you're an intelligent system. Why are you learning a love song? Master, you've changed. You weren't like this in the past. You used to love me so much. Little Blackie changed his tone. Bo Jiao smirked. Next time, don't watch idol dramas online. Be more normal. Take a look at this. As soon as Xiao He scanned it, 3 words appeared in the data system: household register. The Demon King's household register. Little Black's tone was very specific. It was very calm, but even so, it was still trying its best to express its fear. The great Demon King could have given anything, but why did he have to give this to his master? Also, what was the meaning of his master's sweet smile? MMH, Brother Mo's household register. Do you think Brother Mo is hinting at something by giving me his household register? Bo Jiao tapped her chin with her fingers, looking suave. Little Black didn't want to speak because he knew that even if he didn't speak, his master would still be able to give him an answer. Did he want me to confirm our relationship but was too embarrassed to say it directly? That's why he gave me a household register. Bo Jiao shook her head helplessly. Brother Amo has always been like this since he was young, shy. Little Black, it really couldn't imagine what the great devil looked like when he was shy. Chapter 1393. At this moment, Bo Jiao couldn't hear Little Blackie's shouts. You've been overseas with me for a long time. There's something you definitely don't know. In China, people rarely send their household register, so? If cars had expressions, Blackie would definitely be speechless. You're hinting for me to propose. Bo Jiao broke into a beautiful smile. Brother Amo, you really don't mean what you say. Little Black felt the need to stop him. Master, don't forget what Grandpa Butler said. As a girl, you have to be a lady. What does a proposal have to do with being a lady? Besides, Brother Amo has already given himself to me. If I don't express my gratitude, wouldn't I be a scumbag? I'm not a sugar daddy for nothing. Bo Jiao glanced at Little Blackie casually. Xiao He. Fine, fine, fine. You're so handsome. Whatever you say is right. I'm just a driver. Why should I argue with you? It had to ask the netizens later. After the owner found a boyfriend, she didn't pamper the car anymore. What was it going to do? She hadn't been joking when she said she wanted to propose. Since they were going to propose, there had to be a sense of ceremony. Grandpa Butler was an expert in this area. Of course they had to find him. When Grandpa Butler received a call from his young master, he was trimming the orchids he had recently raised. After hearing the conversation, his eyes darkened. Young master, does young Master Cheen know that you're going to propose? Of course I don't know. If I knew, what other surprise would there be? Grandpa Butler thought to himself, that shouldn't be young Master Cheen's plan. No matter how I look at it, it looks like something that our young master came up with. Thinking up to this point, Grandpa Butler once again felt that there was something wrong with his education. He had to remedy it. Young master, you're still young now. You're not allowed to get married in China. That's nothing, we can get engaged first. Bo Jiu leaned against the back of the car, her gaze bright. Grandpa Butler. When their young master became smart, there was really no way to save him. All right. Grandpa Butler took off his gloves. Get engaged first. After all, this is China. As long as they didn't get married, if young Master Cheen did anything wrong to young Lord in the future, he could still bring young Lord back to the Fifth Avenue. After all, it was convenient to do anything there. Here, young master has to redo the messaging system. Of course, although it took time, it was easy for the king of hackers. However, Grandpa Butler hadn't even thought about moving their headquarters to Wuxia. When the boss was still alive, he wanted to return to his homeland many times. However, there were still some things that were inconvenient. It's good that young Master Cheen is here. It was probably because of this that the Key Case Investigation Unit no longer published such reports. What they were thinking was that since young Master Cheen could restrain young master, things wouldn't be too chaotic in the future. In reality, the restrictions were mutual. In the end, it was those two who were willing. He found a balance between black and white. This balance would not be broken in the near future. Grandpa Butler was worried about the future. This time, for the sake of the Asian Cup, young master wanted to participate in the movie. He still had to find an internal solution. At the very least, no one would think that it was really Z. He had to make them feel that young master was only acting, also, about the proposal. Grandpa Butler stretched out his hand, like a perfect gentleman, and pressed his forehead. Since the young master was serious. Chapter 1394. On the other side. After the discussion, Cheen Mo walked back to his office. He glanced at the empty black leather sofa and turned over. His long fingers tugged at his tie, his tone indiscernible. Where is she? His assistant cursed inwardly. Boss Cheen had told him to watch over young Master Joe. Oh no, Miss Joe. She was here just now, the secretary, who had been delivering tea and pastries the entire afternoon, replied. She didn't dare to breathe heavily. Just as the air in the office started to turn cold, Bo Jiu pushed open the door. Bo Jiu reached out and pushed the door open. She arched a brow. Brother Mo, are you done? Cheen Mo's voice was calm. He threw his tie onto the office table and walked over. He held her hand and said, do as you see fit. He brought Bo Jiu downstairs. They walked from the office to the elevator. Countless people wanted to stand up and take a look. Even though they knew that Boss Cheen's girlfriend wasn't simple and had seen her on the internet, it wasn't common. But it wasn't common to see her in real life. Even though she was a member of the club under their company, it was the same. This was a portion of the staff. The other portion was a huge fan of Spade Z. When they saw her in real life, they felt like they were floating. How could Boss Cheen lock such a handsome male god in his office and not let him come out? Now, they finally saw her again. The hearts of the female workers were rippling. The entire atmosphere was different from before. Especially the smell of perfume. It was much lighter. Someone had heard that Spade Z would feel uncomfortable after smelling perfume. All of them started to move. She had never dressed so innocently before. That's right, she looked innocent. Of course, other than the change in makeup. There were even bolder ones. When they saw Boss Chin holding Spade Z's hand, they mustered up their courage. Boss Chin, I'm a fan of Almighty Z, can I give her something? Chin Mo arched a brow. His thin lips seemed to be on the verge of spitting out a word. What is it? Bo Jiu opened her mouth before him. She revealed her canine teeth and smiled beautifully. When the female worker saw that smile, she clutched her small heart and raised the bag in her hand high. Gloves, it's cold now. You usually use the computer a lot, so wearing gloves won't freeze your hands. Bo Jiu watched his blushing face, her smile deepening. She reached for the bag, flipped it open, and put one on. Thank you, I like it. Seeing this, Chin Mo glanced over and said slowly, pink and white plush, don't you think it's girly? The moment Bo Jiu heard that, she knew the Almighty was jealous again. She tilted her head. I don't think so, Brother Mo. I'm a girl, there's nothing feminine about me. That's right, that's right. The female employees nodded. They wanted to be Big Spade. If she could wear this pair of gloves and a red checkered scarf, as long as she stood tall in the snow and smiled lightly, she would be able to melt people's hearts. It wasn't just because he was good looking. He wanted to take it home and raise it. She wanted to pinch his face. Unfortunately, they didn't have the ability to do so, so they could only benefit their President Chin. Most importantly, no one dared to compete with Boss Chin. Their love rival was too strong and he was their boss. What else could they do? There was no point asking the netizens. Even if they couldn't take it home and raise it, they could still feed it. With this thought, everyone couldn't help but take action. Other than the gloves, there were also people who gave her cups, lollipops, and wrist guards. Once they started, they didn't care if their boss was around or not. You have to use this cup, drink more water in winter. The wrist guard is new, it's your favorite brand. And the lollipops, the assistant listened to the voices and glanced at Boss Chin's darkening face. He tilted his head silently. What should he do? Even if he was going to fire her, wasn't this too much? It was the new year and there were fewer talents. The company was also tight on manpower. Young Master Joe, oh no, Miss Joe, why did the sisters like her so much? Speaking of which, these people were usually very efficient, and they were also swift and decisive in doing things. If they weren't swift and decisive, they wouldn't have been able to enter this floor. Why did they all change the moment they saw Miss Joe? Their faces were filled with shyness. They looked as though they wanted to hug her and kiss her. Was this still the elite female team of the Chin group? They hadn't been like this when they saw Boss Chin during the interview. The omnipotent special assistant couldn't understand this point. Bo Jiu's type was the one that attracted both men and women, regardless of age. She was the favorite of the sisters and aunties. There were so many gifts that Bo Jiu couldn't carry them all with both hands. This was probably the limit of Chin Mo's patience. He tilted his head and glanced at the assistant behind him. That gaze was extremely cold. The assistant wiped his cold sweat and immediately went forward. Miss Jiu is busy, please pass me the gifts and I will pass them to you. Let me remind everyone, we are working hours now. Even though he said that, he was screaming in his heart. Didn't you see Boss Chin's expression? He looked as though he had knocked something over. The assistant was there to deal with the aftermath. Chin Mo grabbed the back of her collar and entered the elevator. The others didn't let them in. After pressing the first floor, he turned his hand and pressed onto Bo Jiu's shoulder, pushing her into the elevator. His other hand was placed above her head, his body leaning down. There was a smile on his face, but it didn't look like he was happy. Is the candy delicious? I'm not sure if it's considered delicious. Bo Jiu smiled faintly and lifted her chin. Why don't you try it? Chin Mo looked at the pale lips that were inches away from him. There was still a trace of light. He reached out and pinched her face. You accepted someone else's gift and you still want me to kiss you. Little Bojo, dream on. Bojo, she was rejected by her boyfriend every day. Who else would date like her? But she had no choice, she liked little Princess Chin. Even if he didn't allow her to kiss him, she would still kiss him. This time, Chin Mo didn't hide. Instead, he lowered his head and used his empty right hand to grab her waist, changing the intensity of the kiss completely. He didn't give the elevator a chance to open. This building belonged to the Chin group. Moreover, it was the elevator's password. Moreover, this elevator was originally exclusive to the president. Unless there was something special, Chin Mo was the only one who had the right to use it. This kind of elevator would be available in some conglomerate companies to save time for the senior management. But now, Chin Mo seemed to have developed a new function. Chapter 1395. The temperature continued to rise. Bojo could only hear his suppressed breathing and her own heartbeat. His black and white eyes were still filled with confusion. She placed her hands on Chin Mo's waist and bit her lips lightly. They were slightly red, like flowers in the morning, with dew on them. The numbness hadn't subsided because when she glanced up, she seemed confused. Why did they stop? Chin Mo's gaze sank. Chin Mo's eyes sank. After taking a deep breath, he covered her with his jacket and kissed her again. But this time, it was just a kiss. After all, even at this stage, young Master Chin hadn't forgotten that the location wasn't right. Even though the elevator was well sealed, there was one thing. Chin Mo glanced up, his cold eyes glancing towards the top left corner. The threatening gaze seemed to be able to penetrate through the screen. His assistant immediately switched off the surveillance equipment. The next second, he received a call from Boss Chin. Did you see it? His assistant shook his head. No. It was just a kiss. Boss Chin, aren't you clearer than anyone else? Chin Mo smirked. In the future, don't install surveillance cameras in my elevator. Yes. His assistant truly felt that in the future, Boss Chin would often come to the company to display his affection. Bojo listened as Chin Mo hung up the phone. She was smart enough to notice that the Chin Group's security system had always been thorough. There would definitely be surveillance cameras in such elevators. Bojo wasn't embarrassed. She glanced up and thought for a moment before tilting her head. Do you want me to remove them? With that, Chin Mo buttoned her jacket. Behave yourself, MMH. Aren't you afraid of the bad influence? Bojo's smile was always devilish. Chin Mo chuckled. Which girlfriend would remove all the surveillance cameras in her boyfriend's company? You should hand them over to the security. Also, don't climb the ceiling, it's dirty. Bojo felt that the Almighty was despising her. But it didn't seem like it when he was zipping her up. He was probably afraid she would be cold outside. Bojo picked up the scarf she had just received. Chin Mo arched a brow. You want to wear it? It looks good with my uniform. Bojo gestured. Chin Mo reached out and took the scarf away. I'll buy you a better one. Bojo laughed lightly. Brother Mo, don't tell me you're jealous. Heh, what's there for me to be jealous of? Everyone's gifts added together are not as good as the one I gave you. Chin Mo spoke slowly. After he helped her with her collar, he took out a mask and put it on her ears. When young Master Chin did these things, he gave off a feeling of extreme abstinence. It was hard to imagine that he would take care of anyone like that. Bojo tried to reveal her eyes. When did you give me a present? How other people express their love. Flowers for his girlfriend. Put in a good word for your girlfriend. Everything depended on his girlfriend. The Almighty didn't have any of these. The only fun he had was digging up her dark history and having a heart-to-heart talk with her at night. Basically, the content of their conversation was about how many people she had confessed to. Shin Mo watched the slightly depressed handsome face in front of him. He arched a brow nonchalantly, his voice faint. Am I not considered a present? Bo Jio choked, coughing lightly. How could she have forgotten about that? In that case, the Almighty's present was indeed better than everyone else's combined. Idiot. Shin Mo stared at her for a long while before breaking into a light chuckle. He pulled her up and left, taking all the gifts she had received along the way. Lollipops like these, I can buy them for you if you want. Do you want sweets from someone else or from your boyfriend, MMH? Bo Jio didn't have to think, of course it was from her boyfriend. Where's the scarf? Where's the glove? Such a cute and trendy item doesn't suit you. Anyway, Bo Jio understood the Almighty's meaning. She couldn't use the gifts from others. It would be a waste to throw them away. Bo Jio didn't want to throw away the gifts from her fans. Shin Mo's voice was calm. Who asked you to throw them away? Give it to Lin Feng, he suits this style. All right. Bo Jio broke into a smile. After the competition, Lin Feng was lying in the dormitory, resting. In reality, he was sleeping. When the dormitory manager called him down to take the gifts, he was still confused. Pink and white gloves. Checkered scarf. What were these? More importantly, the dormitory manager had told him, your friends said that you suit this style. What did he mean by that? He was a straight man, why would he suit pink and white gloves? He couldn't throw them away. He scratched his head. When he brought them up, he couldn't help but wear the gloves. Involuntarily, Lin Feng was about to remove them. Yun-Hu pushed the door open. He swept a glance at his attire, his gaze landing on his hands. Lin Feng's face was filled with awkwardness. How was he supposed to explain the origins of the gloves to a gay? In the end, it was just a glove, not a condom. Why couldn't he explain it? It was just a little pink in color. Cough, I don't know which girl who has a crush on me gave it to me. Lin Feng had a serious expression on his face. I've already told them not to give me gifts all the time. Unfortunately, I'm too handsome, so I'm always troubled in this aspect. It's probably because the girls gave me the wrong bag and gave me their gloves. Yun-Hu listened to him quietly. Then he placed the curry chicken he bought on the table. His light-colored trench coat was half open before he smiled slowly. The gloves were given by Captain and Little Spade, they said that this style suits you. Lin Feng, did you know how awkward it was? He had lied and was exposed on the spot. F***CK. All of a sudden. Yun-Hu leaned forward, his fingers touching the gloves that he hadn't had time to remove. MMH. It does suit you. Lin Feng stilled. It was too close. Ever since the competition, he hadn't been this close. The uneasiness came again. Lin Feng tilted his head to the side and took off his gloves. Yun-Hu saw it but didn't say anything. He just hung the trench coat on his arm, returning to a safe distance. Come and eat, the cafeteria has a special meal today. Lin Feng was hungry too. Eating was good, there wasn't any uneasiness when he ate. When Yun-Hu went to wash his hands, he opened the box and took out 2 cans of beer. Boys were always like this. They were always very rough. There was no water during the meal, so he used beer as a substitute. After Lin Feng set up the food, he saw someone walking over and lowered his head to eat. Lin Feng was still a straight man when it came to eating. He took big mouthfuls, burying his head and stuffing his food. Yun-Hu first took a sip of beer, then glanced at him and frowned. You're so hungry, why didn't you order takeout? I wasn't very hungry just now. Lin Feng's cheeks puffed up when he spoke. He drank the beer and then exhaled deeply. I feel alive. Yun-Hu laughed. This was probably how liking someone was. As long as he was by your side, whatever he did, said or ate would be pleasing to the eye. Why are you looking at me? As Lin Feng spoke, he felt that something wasn't right. Yunhu retracted his gaze and replied nonchalantly, "Nothing much, the professor called for you today." F***ck. It can't be. Lin Feng bit the bamboo chopsticks. Was he that unlucky? Yunhu replied. "I said it for you." Lin Feng made a heart gesture. "Brother, what did you say? Did you find a good excuse for me and the professor believed it?" "I knew that with you around, I can rely on everything." "I said the truth." Yunhu took another sip of beer slowly. He said that due to your heavy extracurricular work, you will continue to skip classes and asked him to discipline you when he has time. What? There was a loud crack. The chopsticks in Lin Feng's hand dropped. "Brother, are you trying to get me killed?" Yunhu took another pair of chopsticks and passed it to him. "It's a good thing to inherit the Lin family, but there are some people you aren't suited to interact with. You don't have to manage the company, you can learn a lot from the professor. Besides, I'll be in charge of your attendance in the future. The professor has some papers, you can sort them out." Lin Feng couldn't catch his breath. Brothers. Why did everyone like to attend university? It was because of the freedom in university. What did this mean? Attendance and papers? Was he going back to his normal high school life? Moreover, the one who caused all this was his good brother. Lin Feng leaned his head against the wall. "My results are really good, I don't have to go overseas. You can tell this to the professor." Yunhu watched his expression of resistance, his fingers tightening. "Or do you think it's better to work at the construction site than in school?" Lin Feng hesitated. "That's not it." Yunhu arched a brow. "Is it because of people?" Who?" Lin Feng didn't reply. Just then, Yunhu's phone on the table rang. The name that flashed on the screen was not unfamiliar to him. It had been this number before he left the country, and it was still the same number now. That boy. Lin Feng watched as Yunhu picked up the phone. He didn't seem to have anything to hide. "What is it?" Lin Feng didn't hear the voice on the other side. Because he could not stand the situation, he simply stood up and walked away under the pretext of grabbing another can of beer. His head felt heavy, and he didn't know what he was thinking. He clearly wanted to take a beer, but in the end, he took out a bag of spicy sticks. What was going on? Lin Feng looked at the things in his hands and estimated that it was about time before he walked back. Sure enough, when he sat back in his chair and picked up his chopsticks, Yunhu had already hung up. "You eat first, I'm going out for a bit." Lin Feng grunted in acknowledgement. He lowered his head and stuffed another mouthful of rice into his mouth. Then, he added, "I might go out later too." "Take the key with you." Yunhu glanced at him. "Where are we going?" Lin Feng thought to himself, "You're going out on a date, why do you care where I'm going?" The report should have been submitted some time ago. Yunhu knew it was about the Lin Corporation and he knew who was in charge of Lin Feng. "Didn't I say to stay in school?" Lin Feng placed the beer in his hand down. "I think it's better outside, I'll tell the professor." Yunhu tightened his grip on the phone. "You think it's better outside?" "Heh, I'm being a busybody." Lin Feng was annoyed by the sound of the phone. "No, everyone thinks differently, right? You're so smart, so you'll definitely be suitable in school. I'm different. It's not like you don't know that I've always been slow in this aspect. With a personal system to guide me, I can grow faster. Plus, the company can't wait for me that long. So, you think I can't bring you along?" Yunhu tilted his head and seemed to smile. Lin Feng didn't want the atmosphere to be too tense. Firstly, the competition had just ended, and secondly, Huzi had just returned. Lin Feng glanced at Huzi's phone screen. All right. Don't you have to go out? I can handle my matters. I'm not a child anymore. Basically. This kind of excuse. It could be said to be a complete rejection. Yunhu's hand fell to the side, his eyes looking at the person standing in front of him. Sometimes, he really wanted to ask a certain someone. You can't accept a man. Or you simply can't accept me. But he couldn't ask such a question. Because once he asked, it would be equivalent to forcing everything into a corner. Since he had already told him. This time, he wouldn't be like the previous time. He was determined to turn him gay. So, no matter what, he wouldn't retreat just like that. We'll talk about this when I come back. Before Yunhu left, he reached out and caressed Lin Feng's head. Lin Feng was a little stunned. When the door closed, he couldn't eat anymore. What was this? Didn't Yunhu know how to keep a distance? Or was it because he had completely put him back in the position of a good brother? Hence, he wouldn't be so careful with his actions. Lin Feng threw himself onto the bed. He didn't turn on the lights as the sky gradually darkened. That phone number appeared in his mind again. It seemed it was better to move out. If he didn't move out, the direction was getting more and more wrong. Perhaps it wasn't something wrong with Yunhu. It was him. What exactly did this F***ket-up feeling mean? Lin Feng raised his hand and placed it on his forehead. He told himself. Things had already come to this stage. It was already useless to say that he regretted it. The competition was also over. It was already the second half of his third year. The school wouldn't say anything even if he moved out. If the professor said it seriously, he would get permission. Everything was fine. He was still greedy for the gentleness that belonged to him in the past. Not long ago, he didn't have the right to have it anymore. Those two people were very good. He could only say. They probably weren't fated in this life. They were destined to be in the position of brothers. It wasn't that the timing wasn't right. It was just that the timing wasn't right. In this world, it was the easiest thing to regret. It was probably because you were determined to turn gay. Chapter 1396. Lin Feng didn't wait for Yunhu to come back. He found an excuse, sent a message and went home. When Yunhu received the message, his eyes dimmed. The boy looked at it. It's him? Yunhu kept his phone, his voice calm. I've arranged everything for you. Look for Director Xiao when you get there. Don't appear here again. The boy wanted to have something with Yunhu. But he realized that the person who asked him to act was too hard to get close to. No, it wasn't just hard to get close to. He had never intended to have anything to do with any boy other than that person. After the act, the boy realized it. Hence, after receiving the money, he was well behaved. This time, it was something they had agreed on beforehand. But the boy didn't understand why this person wanted him to go out of town. Mr. Yun, can I ask when I can come back? Yunhu glanced at him. I said don't appear here again. The boy paused, feeling the impatience. In reality, Yunhu's temper wasn't good to anyone. Only Lin Feng. Most of the time, as Lin Feng had said, as the only grandson of the Yun family, he didn't care about anyone's feelings. Even if he had a good upbringing. But his nature was arrogant. That was probably what he meant. The boy didn't dare to say anything else. He knew that even though this person was a university student, with his family background, it would be easy to make him disappear from this circle. Moreover, his current boss had given him the title of VIP. After Yunhu met him, he called his good friend, his voice emotionless. Murongan, what do you mean? From what you said, did you meet him? How is it? I saw you take him away previously, so I kept an eye on him. This time, I asked him to contact you directly. Brother, you're finally enlightened. Yes, Lin Feng isn't bad, but people are straight, right? With your thoughts, he definitely wouldn't be able to understand them. Moreover, I feel that even if he understood them, it's not like he'll. Before he could finish his sentence, Yunhu interrupted him. I seem to have warned you before, don't talk about people like him in front of me. Okay, okay, I was wrong. Murongan didn't want to anger this boss. Is it because I don't like my arrangement today? This time, Yunhu laughed, but his voice was extremely cold. If you continue to arrange these messy things, you know what the consequences will be. Murongan's back stiffened, and he immediately restrained his tone. Alright, I know you're being conservative. The competition is over, so what do you plan to do next? Didn't you say you wouldn't go abroad? Yunhu replied faintly, knowing that he wouldn't mess around. Stay in school. It's as simple as staying in school. Murongan had long wanted to do something with this big shot. Apart from him, probably no one else knew how powerful this big shot was. He was the top student of a university, and he had never gotten that title for nothing. When it came to international discussions, those professors would always bring him along. This was a very powerful thing. Ordinary people might not be able to feel it, but businessmen would understand. To be able to attend such events, it wasn't just a matter of money and power. It was also a matter of real ability, or even top-notch ability. In addition, Yunhu already had a background, so it was easy for him to get some resources. It would be a pity if such a person didn't do something. Yunhu spoke on the phone as he walked up the stairs, his tone still the same. During this period of time. Don't. Murongan's eyes suddenly turned. Haven't you always been doing that? Yunhu frowned. Speak properly, what's that? Lin Corporation. Murongan grasped the most important point. Hasn't Lin Feng been running around the Lin Corporation's construction projects recently? They seem to want to cooperate with us. How about it? Are you interested? At this moment, Yunhu had already opened the door to the dormitory. It was already empty. The person who was originally sitting at the table was nowhere to be seen. It was empty as though the wind could pour in. Yunhu closed the door, lowering his lids to glance at the direction of the luggage. Even there was no one there. What was this person planning to do? Hey, are you listening to me, big shot? Boss. Murongan held the phone, not knowing what was going on over there. He wanted to raise his voice, but a voice came over. He didn't know if it was because it was winter, but it sounded cold. I'll accept the cooperation you mentioned just now. Murongan really didn't expect it to be so easy. Although he had expected that mentioning a certain person's name would be useful. But according to his understanding, even if Yunhu was a person like this, he might not be poached over. But now, although Murongan didn't know what was going on, from a certain point of view, it was like a pie falling from the sky to him. That's great, I'll immediately go and ask the people below to loosen the conditions for them. No need. Yunhu glanced at the empty luggage rack again. The conditions are the same as usual, but there's one more condition. Let Lin Feng come over personally. Don't tell him that I'm in charge. Murongan understood tacitly, all right. Don't worry, I'm doing things right. Yunhu hung up the phone. He sat on the chair in the dormitory. It felt a little cold. He asked that person to wait for him. But that person took away his luggage. It was obvious that he had the intention to move out. Indeed, for people like them, they could have moved out a long time ago. They just had to apply to the professor. For third-year students, it was easier to operate this way. After all, the students of a university basically had their own set of logic when they were outside. Yunhu was the professor who refused to let him go. Otherwise, just like what Murongan had said, he would be a CEO wherever he went. Besides, who didn't know this person's face? Most importantly, he didn't want to leave. Regarding this, Murongan was also clear about it. Firstly, it was because of Supreme Alliance. Secondly, it was because he wanted to accompany someone as simply as possible. Yunhu had once said, if it wasn't for him, or if he wasn't by my side, I really don't know what kind of person I would become. When he said this, Yunhu was lying on the ground. The wine bottles at his feet were all toppled. Only he was sober. Probably only people familiar with him knew this. Yun who wasn't a good-tempered person, and he wasn't a kind person. Especially when he was young. The Yun family was worried that he was too stubborn and would become a bad person when he grew up. Indeed, Yun who seemed calm, but he could play with any kind of people. Old Master Yun had once said, if this child was raised well, he would be a political talent. If he wasn't raised well, he would become the biggest headache for the Yun family. If he hated someone, he would use the most vicious methods to deal with the other party. He was polite to people, but he never really put anyone in his heart. There was no absolute concept. Until Lin Feng appeared. At that time, Lin Feng was older than him. But because of his exquisite looks, Yun who was especially patient with him the first time they met. Yun who liked beautiful things, be it objects or people. But at that time, he thought he liked Lin Feng because he was beautiful. But the more he waited, the more he realized that wasn't the case. Even if his hands were dirty from playing basketball, he didn't care. Because he was disfigured from fighting, he just wanted to beat up the person who fought with him. The two of them just had to sit together and play Super Mario. When he was 5 years old, he didn't seem to know anything. How could it be calm when boys interacted? Naturally, it was a case of you kicking me once and I kicking you once. But the next day, he would still drink a glass of milk with him. He just found this person pleasing to the eye. The more he looked, the more pleasing to the eye. So pleasing that his mother said, it would be good if Lin Feng was a little girl. Look at how interesting it is when they are together, they even eat at the same time. Or when she was helping him put on gloves. Playing with Lin Feng again? You child, only Lin Feng can make up with you. Old Li has been crying for 3 days. Didn't he just break one of your game controllers? You don't want to play anymore. Lin Feng has broken so many of your controllers, but I've never seen you act like this. Old Li's boy wasn't ugly, he really looked like a doll. But he still felt that the yawning kid was the cutest. Especially the way he protected him. It was unforgettable. But now, he didn't seem to be protecting him anymore. He even wanted to move out. Yun who sat there, unsure if he was smiling or something. The corners of his lips were pressed down and he looked lonely from afar, on the other side. Mother Lin was surprised to see Lin Feng return home. Why are you back at this hour? Why did you bring so many things? I don't have class tomorrow. Lin Feng replied vaguely. I have a project to work on. This place is close to the company, so I came back first. I'll talk to the professor. Mother Lin looked at him. Son, even though I think it's fine, you still have to take care of the school. I know. Lin Feng placed his luggage. Mama Lin glanced outside again. Are you alone? Lin Feng removed his scarf. Mother Lin arched a brow. Where's who? Isn't he in the same dorm as you? The two of you are so old, could it be that you had some sort of conflict? No, Empress Dowager. Lin Feng was helpless. Don't keep thinking about the plot in your head. Why would I fight with him? Mother Lin nodded. Indeed, who has a good temper? If you fight with him, no one will play with you in the future. Lin Feng. Who exactly is your biological son? Mother Lin asked, then tell me, since you didn't fight, why did you come back alone? If I remember correctly, who should be in school now? Chapter 1397. Mother Lin noticed that Lin Feng's condition wasn't right today. She had thought that he was really tired because he had to run to school and the company. Plus, the competition had just ended. Her son probably wanted to rest, so she didn't ask further. Lin Feng carried his luggage and threw himself onto the bed without tidying up his clothes. Before this, the Lin family had already moved out of the military courtyard. Their neighbor was no longer the Yun family. It was probably because of the gap that had always existed. That was why it was like this now. Fortunately, the competition was over. However, there was another meaning to the end of the competition. Even the interaction between the two of them was about to come to an end. In the past, they could still be connected through the competition. What could they rely on in the future? In the adult world, there had to be something. If they had met later on, perhaps the gap wouldn't have been so huge. But it was because they had grown up together. Lin Feng closed his eyes. However, it was too late to think about this. He had to maintain a suitable distance. Even if they met in the future, it would be at the club. Mother Lin glanced at the room outside the door. He fell asleep so quickly. It was probably because Lin Feng didn't have much to do. Hence, most of the time, no one would describe him as meticulous. After the competition, everyone's life was different. Shui Yao Yao was the same. She stood under the shower, wanting to wash away the scent on her body. But she realized that once something was imprinted on her, it was hard to get rid of it. Fortunately, it wasn't too late. She was basically used to it now. After living for a long time, one would get used to it. For example, she could calmly stand in front of him and put on her clothes one by one. If it was in the past, she wouldn't have dared to think about it. Her appointment with him was coming to an end. When she entered university, everything would stop. At that time, there wouldn't be so many messy things. Shui Yao Yao put on the long down jacket. She still wasn't that eye-catching. But it could be seen. Compared to before, the down jacket was a whole circle bigger. Jiang Zuo was half naked, his back leaning lazily against the headboard. His slender fingers held a cigarette. His expression couldn't be seen from this angle. But he could see her clearly. She had changed so much since he knew her. At that time, he had never even thought that she would lose weight one day. Furthermore, he had lost so much weight. Inexplicably, Jiang Zuo felt frustrated. Especially when he saw that she was still so empty after putting on the down jacket, he remembered that she only ate an apple for lunch. Was there a need for such a thing? After seeing that back view, Jiang Zuo pressed the cigarette butt into the ashtray, a faint smile in his voice. Do you intend to be like this forever? Shui Yao Yao stopped and turned around to look at him. Her eyes were filled with confusion. Thinness is beauty. Jiang Zuo was a person that others couldn't see through. It was true in the past, and it was even more so now. Shui Yao Yao's expression was indifferent. She didn't seem to be targeting him. They seemed to be like this. They couldn't quarrel. When they saw each other, they were intimate. After the intimacy, they returned to their respective homes. There would even be a scene of siblings being courteous at the dinner table the next day. Recently, even his mother had become a lot happier. The atmosphere of the Jiang family had never been better. Chapter 1398. Oh, no. Shui Yao Yao put on the hood of her down jacket. I'm leaving first, wait for half an hour before you leave. It's safe this way and Uncle Jiang won't think too much. Jiang Zuo laughed, but there was no warmth in his eyes. You're different from before. You're really thoughtful now. Shui Yao Yao didn't study the meaning of his smile. She took the things. Be careful. The Jiang family needed them to be harmonious. This way, her mother's life would be much better. In reality, she didn't want to continue like this. After all, in some people's eyes, they would always be basking in the glory of the Jiang family. Shui Yao Yao didn't deny this. But she didn't play sports. Shui Yao Yao had heard the comments of people in his circle. Play sports? She's still playing at this age, girls playing esports. Like the female casters? The last sentence was always a little flirtatious. In the entertainment empire, the Jiang family held many business gatherings. Jiang Zuo didn't know why, but he suddenly figured it out. Shui Yao Yao had always understood that Uncle Jiang marrying her mother was just nostalgia. In his heart, he still liked the woman who had a similar voice and appearance to Jiang Zuo. Jiangzhua had a good temper and Uncle Jiang was happy all day. Even such business gatherings were mostly controlled by Jiangzhua. The people who came seemed to know her and her mother's identity. There was no disrespect. There was no respect. Of course, there were still some gossip. The daughters he knew, her classmates, would always say a few words when they saw her. Most of them were to wake her up, not to have wishful thinking and not to think that she could do anything just because she was close. Shui Yaoyao didn't speak. If she had a choice, she wouldn't want to return to the Jiang family. Compared to these occasions, she would rather stay in Uncle Yin's internet cafe. There was cocoa, feng shang, and Uncle Yin's various instant noodles. It was a warmth that wasn't present in the Jiang family. Very few people cared about her studies. Other than Coco, who would nod her head and say, "Really, why is it so difficult? Are all the questions in the country so difficult? My head is about to explode." As a young master who grew up overseas, he wasn't used to the lessons in the country. Because of this, Coco even called his captain and asked pitifully if he could tutor him. As the student representative of a university, the captain had never been weak in science. "I only tutor my girlfriend." Almighty Qin's words completely froze Coco. Even now, Shui Yaoyao found the scene hilarious. Because it was rare that Almighty Qin didn't hang up the phone. He added, "Also, don't always call to disturb my relationship. Can't you guys solve this kind of small matter yourselves?" After Coco was hung up on, he posted on Weibo, "Captain, have you ever considered the feelings of us single dogs? Why is the question so difficult?" Many people were comforting her at the foot of the stairs. But what was even more heart-wrenching was that most of the fans were asking, "How did you show off? Tell us about it." Coco finally caught him, and he started to complain about his captain's usual behavior. Because it was Weibo. Bojio would come to take a look as well. You're tuning into the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.